that celebrity that's being advertised to me. Like that is all there, right? That's a very underlying part of like programming. And whether, and if I feel like I'm good enough, then it's going to be very hard to sell things to me, right? Because I don't feel like I need it. But if I don't feel like I'm good enough because of what's being projected at me about how I should appear, then obviously I'd be a lot more vulnerable to be able to jump at any chance to feel better about myself through consumption. So these are all very important things to be mindful of, because it is so like it's very underlined. It's not in your face as much as like when you look at like reality TV, for example, you know, if it's like a 44-minute show, it's 44 minutes of product placement about where they went, what they ate, what they drank, what they wore, the handbag, the hair color, like virtually everything. We watch a movie and you'll see it's product placement. So, you know, even though there's entertainment for us, and that is, you know, some way that, you know, obviously we have access to all this entertainment, but it's also like, how does this make me feel? Right? Or maybe
history. We haven't had a February election since 1883, so this is one of the first that we're going to experience tonight. And then it's also the Liberals. The Liberals, are they going to make a comeback and get into party status under Bonnie Crombie? And the NDP under Merritt Stiles, two new leaders in this election cycle. Is she going to be able to hold on to her position as the opposition leader? Yes, everyone is going for the top job as premier, and we're going to start that tonight. We have two great guests. We have Quito Maggie, who's the founder and CEO of Main Street Research, and Robert Martin, who's the senior data analyst at Main Street Research. Hello and welcome.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
This evening, what do you project is going to happen tonight? And the seat counts that we're looking at, 124 seats, where the PC is going to be, what's going to happen to the Liberals, will they get party status, and what about the NDP, and of course the Greens, how are they going to do? Are they going to be able to hold on to their 2 seats?
Well, let's start with what we know. What we know for sure is that it's going to be a majority government for the PCs. Barring some major turnout effect that we're not seeing, it's going to be a PC majority. Our poll, every poll, projects a majority. How big is really the question at this point. You know, we haven't seen this kind of disparity in polls very late in an Ontario election, especially. I haven't seen. I'm sorry, I haven't seen anything like this in terms of disparity. On the low end, you have some polls that show a 9-point lead for the PCs, as low as 40%. And then others where the PCs are as high as 48%. Some people have even suggested that the PCs will even overperform those polls. I've heard that just today. So it's going to come down to turnout. We know a couple of things about turnout today. It was expected to be extremely low. Remember, in the last election, it was a record low 44% turnout, probably expecting that to be even lower in this election. Not necessarily as low as some people had projected. Some people thought maybe around 30%, cracking 35% would be a challenge. I think based on what we know, it's going to be above 40%, maybe just below or just above what the turnout was in 2022. That's what we know. Our poll had the final 44-30, with the NDP at just short of 17%. We are projecting conservative majority. All polls are. And I'll let Robert speak to seat count, and then we can talk about ridings to watch. 2018 or 2022. We just don't know what that means. Could it be people who voted Liberal in 2014 but then sat out the 2018 and 2022 elections? Could it be people who are new citizens? Who does that advantage? Who does that disadvantage? It's hard to know. We don't know specifically, but we just know that those are the general numbers. So turnout's going to really matter in terms of who's right on popular vote. I think the seat count. The seat count is going to be very different because the Liberals are much more competitive in the 416, in the 905, a couple of other pockets in Ottawa. And turnout in different demographics in some of those ridings is really going to matter. So I'll let Robert go through some of those, ridings to watch now, but there's some interesting dynamics, and I'll jump in if I have to on a few of those.
Yeah, well, yeah, I'll say we are starting to get some results in now. So if we want to talk about that, it's looking the PCs are up at 43.4% of the popular vote so far. Liberals at 28.4, NDP at about 19. That's roughly what we had in our polls. Again, very small amount of the polls reporting, not a lot of data in here at this point. Lots of key areas missing, large swaths of Toronto, pretty much all of Mississauga is missing. Some of the better Ottawa riding. So I'd expect the Liberals to make up that gap a little bit. A lot of the better Conservative ridings are reporting, so I'd expect the Liberals to gain a couple points from there. But outside of that, this is roughly what we're expecting here, in terms of the results that are coming in so far. What I can say is the Liberals are actually doing pretty well in some of the ridings, but it's a bit too early to say at this point anything. But at this point, you definitely want to be the PCs. The numbers are looking pretty similar to what we've been polling numbers have looked like. So yeah, I mean, at this point, the ridings you're going to want to watch are in Mississauga. Pretty much the entire kind of QEW belt down there. Mississauga East, that's obviously Bonnie Crombie's riding. Let's see if she can win it. It's a riding the Ontario Liberals do not hold. She does not have a seat in legislature. Her political future is going to be hugely impacted by whether or not she can win that seat tonight, as well as Mississauga Lakeshore, the seat right next door. Mississauga Center, Mississauga Erin Mills, all those kind of clustered there in southern Mississauga. Also coming down the QEW a little bit to Oakville, seeing if Oakville North and Burlington are competitive, and also Toronto ridings. Obviously, the Liberals hold the Don Valleys. They want to break through in at Eglinton Lawrence. They want to win Toronto St. Paul, and then expanding northward of that, north of the 401. So like Don Valley North, Willowdale, Humber River, Black Creek. That's where we're looking tonight for the results, and the battle's there. If the Liberals can take those from the PCs, then they're in good shape, at least for party status. And then in terms of the NDP ridings, you're looking outside of that GTA area. So you're looking at your Hamiltons, you're looking at your Niagaras. The NDP hold 3 of the 4 seats in Hamilton. Well, technically the 3 of the 4 they won last time. One of the seats when Andrea Horwath resigned as party leader, there was a by-election. The NDP won that by-election, but the NDP MPP in that seat was removed from caucus. So technically they currently only hold 2 of the 3, but we'll call it 3 of the 3 from the last election. In Niagara, they hold 3 of the 4 in Niagara. They hold 3 of the 3 in London. They hold 1 in Windsor. Those seats are crucial for an NDP, for the NDP to be official opposition, and that, and also the downtown Toronto seats, right? You're thinking Parkdale High Park, Davenport, Toronto Centre, Spadina Fort York. Those seats are crucial for the NDP to maintain official opposition. So that's the battlefield we're going to be looking at tonight.
Yeah, and do you think that perhaps the Liberals have done better than expected? Because there's a federal leadership
like the Liberals have always been between something like 28 to 31. They've always been in that band. The NDP have always been somewhere between 17 to 20. So that's not really surprising. I think that's kind of what we've been expecting, and that's and for the results we're seeing so far, that's kind of what we're seeing here tonight.
Yeah, exactly. And the other thing is, this election is really, all the parties ran on something different. So, with Doug Ford, he ran on the party that's going to protect you with the Trump tariffs. And the Liberals ran on healthcare, majority of it. The NDP, there was a lot of similarities between the Liberals and the NDP, their platforms, but they ran on affordability. And so it'll be very interesting to see what resonates with Ontarians tonight in terms of, we know that when there is a crisis like what we're seeing with Trump tariffs, that usually people unite for an incumbent. We also know that when there is a lower voter turnout, that for that reason, the incumbent usually does better. So when it comes to some of these key ridings to take a look at, I have like Beaches, East York, for example, where it's flipped between the Liberals and the NDP for the last 4 elections. Of course, the incumbent, the Liberal incumbent is running again, but it's going to be another playoff between the Liberal and the NDP. So that's a key thing to watch. What do you think is going to happen there?
With about 25% of the polls reporting so far, a couple of ridings that we're looking at in Eglinton Lawrence, Vince Gasparo had a small lead. Now with another poll reporting, now there's a small lead of 685 votes for Michelle Cooper. We know this is a riding the PCs were targeting very strongly. In Mississauga, East Cooksville, Bonnie Crombie is trailing by 816 votes with 23% of the polls reporting. It's an 816 vote margin. That one is surprising right now. Obviously too early to call any of these.
Here in Brampton,
I noticed that. Sorry.
No, go ahead. We have, as you're saying, there's also Brampton Center. That for us is something to watch because you have Charmaine Williams, who's the incumbent running for the PCs, and then Martin Madero's a very well-known regional council running for the Liberals. So that is something that we're also watching close to see how that's going to flip in terms of Brampton Center. What do you guys think so far that from your tracker polls?
Brampton Center. I don't think that one was on our. We didn't do a riding poll there. I'm not sure what the model said about Brampton Center. Robert, do you have
safe conservative seat.
Safe PC.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's been called by the networks as a conservative win. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So we see that she's leading. And it's been called by them. Okay, so yeah, that's going to be very interesting to see because she's the incumbent. She was previously a Brampton councillor, and then she won in the last 2022 election. So this would be her second election running for the PCs. And then, like you said, there's the Eglinton Lawrence seat that's close to watch because that was flipped to PCs for the last 2 elections, but with the NDP stepping down and saying that they don't want to split the votes. That was very interesting in this election cycle because, there's always all that speculation if there's ever going to be a coalition for the parties on the left. And so what do you think, seeing that announcement right before, being able to put their names forward for Elections Ontario to be on the ballot?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question? I was just looking at.
I was saying with Eglinton Lawrence, what was interesting there with the NDP candidate withdrawing to say that they didn't want to split the votes on the left, even though Eglinton Lawrence went PC in the last 2 elections, but it was previously, not held by the PC. So that's an interesting thing to see if that changes anything for the people who would have potentially voted NDP. Are they just going to, still vote NDP on the ballot, or are they just going to consolidate their vote for that coalition and just vote for the Liberals?
Our poll still had a pretty small number, but I think it was 4% of people still telling us in that riding poll that they were going to vote NDP. I don't know where that sits right now, but yeah, some people are just going to vote the brand and not really care about the fact that the candidate has withdrawn. Although we thought that was going to give the advantage. Michelle Cooper's now it extended her lead to 1,400 votes, 39% of the polls reporting. This is starting to look like a surprise, certainly from our riding polls. Now Sylvia Gualtieri in Mississauga's Cooksville has extended the lead to 1,500 votes, with 39% of the polls reporting. Again, we don't know if any of these are advanced polls yet, but this is certainly surprising at this early stage. I don't know what the top line provincial results still sitting right around our poll. This looks exactly like our poll. 43.86 for the PCs, 29.54 for the Ontario Liberals. This is precisely, we had it 30, 49, 43.7 to 29.5. The NDP is doing slightly better. Right now, the NDP is still holding 24 seats, and the Ontario Liberals are at 14. If these results stick, the NDP could hold official opposition. There are some surprises out there tonight. Let's put it that way.
Why do you think throughout the campaign, it was consistently said that Merritt Stiles was having a hard time getting recognized or being seen, whereas Bonnie Crombie was getting a lot more noticed? Is it just in their style of campaigning and how they really pitch how they do? Is that what you think the difference was in terms of one getting noticed and the other one not as much?
I think this campaign was very unique in that there was, the media coverage was limited. There's lots going on. Remember, there's the federal leadership is going on. Donald Trump is out here making announcements every single day. I will note that Ottawa West and Nepean, where there was a riding poll as well showing the NDP winning, looks like 7,000 vote margin probably has been called with more than 50%. That one's staying solidly NDP. There was a lot of debate about whether or not the NDP did enough, whether Merritt Stiles did enough. Right now, it looks like the NDP is holding where they need to hold, and the Liberals are just not making the gains they need to make. Gualtieri's now leading by 16-23. And Michelle Cooper and Eglinton Lawrence leading by 11.55, approaching 50% of polls reporting. So,
yeah, and so just to go over what we're seeing in the stats that are coming in with the polls, with the numbers for Brampton Centre, you got Charmaine Williams, the PC incumbent. She's got 52.6% of the shares of the votes. Martin Medeiros behind her at 33%. And then when you come to Brampton East, another PC riding, Hardeep Grewal at 50% of the votes so far as it's being counted, and Vicky Dillon for the Liberals, he's at 31%, Martin Singh at 11%, and it's just going on from there. Brampton North, which turned into a PC seat in the last election. Previously it was an NDP, and it looks like Graham McGregor, who's the PC incumbent, so far has 57% of the voter share, as well as now for the Liberals, Ranjit Baga, he's got 30%, and the NDP there with Ruby Zaman at 8.2%. So that's a big flip that previously was held by the NDP. And Brampton South, we're seeing Parmeet Sakaria, the PC incumbent, who won election in 2018 and in 2022. He's so far has 52.9% of the share, with the Liberal Bhavik Partik at 32%, and Rajani Sharma, the NDP, at 8%. So yeah, the NDP vote isn't rising like it used to in Brampton, so we're seeing that across. And when it comes to Brampton West, Amarjot Sandhu, he is the incumbent. This is his third election cycle. He's at 56% of the share of the votes right now, with Andrew Kenya, who was a previous politician running for Liberals. He's at 32%. And the NDP there is barely at 6%. So that's what's happening so far in Brampton. Of course, Mississauga is important to watch as well to what's going on there. And another key seat is Etobicoke Lakeshore. What's going on there? Because it's been flipping between Liberals and Conservatives for the last 30 years. We had the PCs take that, of course, with the massive wave in 2018. When the Liberals lost party status, but that's showing as potentially, Christine Hoggart, she actually, there was about an 800 vote separating between the Liberal and the incumbent PC candidate. What do you think is going to happen there tonight?
It's now 30 vote lead for Lee Fairclough. Our riding poll showed that she was going to win quite handily here. 3,500 vote margin with 36% reporting. That's approaching being able to call this. I was going to say, let's look at where Liberals are picking up. This is one where the model picked this one up. In Ajax, Rob Serjanik, the Liberal candidate, is up by just 67 votes over Patrice Barnes of the PC party, with almost 2/3 of the polls reporting at this point. This looks to be a bit of a surprise pickup for the Liberals. Lee Fairclough is now leading by 3,300. Rob Serjanik is now, the margin is just seven votes, with 29 of 42 polls reporting. That could be a surprise. Eglinton Lawrence, Michelle Cooper is still holding a 1,200 vote lead, with now over 50% of the polls reporting. This one would be a shocker. We know the PCs threw an army into this riding to beat the Liberal candidate Vince Gasparo. However, we did expect that one to be a win, and now Sylvia Gualtieri has opened up an 1,800 vote lead over Bonnie Crombie in Mississauga. That would be an absolute shock.
Yeah,
that's you're right.
Despite the provincial poll numbers staying right exactly dead where we said they would be. 43.8, 29.47. That's where popular vote, the province-wide, sits, precisely where our poll said. Some of these ridings, there's a number of surprises out there. I haven't looked at Mississauga Lakeshore. Etobicoke Lakeshore looks to be going as expected. But some of these where the PCs focus their efforts, like Mississauga East Cooksville, like Eglinton Lawrence, it looks like those efforts are paying off. Rudy Pizzetto is now leading Elizabeth Mendez by a similar margin, 1,849 votes, with 44% in. Again, this would be a surprise in terms of compared to the riding polls, but we know that the PCs were putting a lot of effort into a number of these ridings that they expected to be close, and for now at least it appears to be working, despite the provincial top lines being right in line with what we expected.
Yeah, it seems that way. It seems like the race is really in Mississauga because, with Bonnie Crombie, given that she was the mayor in Mississauga, it's shocking to see some of these things coming in, because you think that because of her pull in that city, she'd be able to get, majority of those 6 seats. But when you look at from Mississauga Centre, it's very close between a PC incumbent, Natalia Kusendova, at 48%, and then the Liberal candidate who ran previously, Surma Malik, at 40%. It's fairly close. The NDP's not anywhere close at 6%. Again, Mississauga East Cooksville right now, Like you said, you have Sylvia Gualteri in the lead at 48%, and with Bonnie Crombie at 41%. So that we're still watching that. The NDP is at, what is it here? It's at 5%. So that's a non-factor. Mississauga, Erin Mills, Sharif Shabawi is leading with 44%, but a very close call. Liberal Kassir Dar at 43%. So there's only a 1% difference there in terms of voter share, and NDP at 5%. So that's
Ajax has now flipped back to the PCs just by 86 votes, with 31 of 42 reporting 73%. This one's going to be a nail biter. Obviously, this is a blowout win at this point. The polls are perfectly in line with what the Main Street polls said. The seat counts right now are just a complete reversal. The NDP seems to have found their vote efficiency. The Liberals right now sitting right at the cutoff line for official party status with 12 seats, and their leader approaching very much the danger zone about where potentially this could be called at this point.
If I could jump in there about, I think I have some insight on what's happening with the seats. So at this point, it very much seems that NDP incumbents are getting some pretty strong crossover voting here. I mean, you look at Hamilton, Niagara. Obviously, NDP have been the network. They've been called in Niagara Falls as the winner, called in St. Catharines as the winner, and Niagara Center, the riding I live in. It's that one hasn't been called yet, but the NDP have a lead there, and that riding has actually a shift towards the PCs from 2022, towards the NDP. Actually, they're gaining vote share in those ridings. However, next door in Niagara West, where there is not an NDP incumbent, the NDP are in a distant third, and the Liberals have actually gained vote share. So it seems, and the NDP are about where we have them at. I think we had them at about 16 point something, and they're at 17. So that's within a point. But from looking at this, it seems as though anybody who had an incumbent NDP voted for the NDP candidate in order to stop the Conservatives. And if you didn't have an NDP incumbent, then it seems as though you are voting for the Liberal. And that's an example of just in Niagara. You could find all kinds of other examples of that as well. And yeah, we are definitely in the danger zone here in Mississauga East. All of the other Mississaugas, actually 4 of the other 6 Mississaugas have been called. Mississauga Lakeshore has been called. Mississauga Erin Mills has not been called yet, but looking at the way this is going, I don't think the Liberals would be able to pull that one out. Mississauga East, again, this is the danger zone for Crombie, but literally a riding border. Etobicoke Lakeshore, Liberals are picking that one up, right? Literally, it borders it, right? And again, they're actually doing well in Toronto. They're actually looking to potentially make some gains here. They're making gains everywhere else, and Crombie is just not getting it. Now, it hasn't been called. There's actually a lot less polls reporting. About half the polls are reporting. So we'll have to see very soon. But if they don't win that seat, that would be a very disappointing night, especially because there is other gains, right? I mean, the vote share is holding up, right? 43.7 province-wide for the PCs, 29.5. NDP sitting at 18. The Liberals are almost double. It's not perfectly double, but it's almost double their vote share, and they're at half their seats. It's like comical, the inefficiency of the Liberal vote at this point. And the reason is because I think the NDP are getting a massive boost from strategic voters there in that case.
Yeah, and you had even Bonnie Crombie, reach out on the debate, really asking the votes from NDP, and she was really saying, hey, if you guys want us to be elected, she directly went after the NDP vote, blatantly at the debate. So now we just want to tell you that what are the ridings that are already called. You have Essex, that is won by the PCs. You have Chatham, Kent, Leamington, Elgin, Middlesex, London, Oxford. All those have been called by PCs Niagara West with, the incumbent Sam Oosterhoff. You have Caroline Mulroney's York Simcoe seat, that's been called. And it's just coming in. We're seeing, of course, the PCs as the incumbent leading here. You have Vaughan Woodbridge with Michael Tobolo win. It's been called Etobicoke North, of course. That is Peace Leader Doug Ford. He's won his seat. No surprise there. What do you think about Michael Ford's seat? That what are we looking at there? That because he's not running, and I think that was previously a Liberal seat.
Which one is that? Is that Humber? River?
I'll tell you in a moment. But just to go over the finalized, so Thornhill called for PCs, Aurora, Oak Ridges, Richmond Hill for Michael Parsa, he won there for the PCs. Markham, Unionville, Billy Pang, he won his seat there. So some of they're just coming in now. So we're tracking that.
Another one
so
to
when
note,
it comes to
sorry, just wanted to jump in to say, on the independent note, Sarah Jama holding about close to 15% of the vote, like our writing poll said. NDP is going to hold this seat. Robin Lennox looks has a 5,000 vote margin now with 31 of 51 polls reporting, pretty in line with the writing poll we did. Still looking at, there's half a dozen ridings that are not reporting yet. Top line is still holding. Some of these seat counts, Liberals now back at 13. I have to imagine that Ajax has now flipped back. It was an 8-point lead. This one's going to go back and forth all night.
Actually, just a quick note about the Liberal seat count there. There is the polling hours have been extended in some polling places. One of them is Orleans with a Liberal incumbent who's very heavily favored. So when talking about the Liberal seat count, just kind of add one. So at this point, they're looking very good for official party status.
Yeah, so that means Bonnie Crombie, will, hopefully if she wins her seat, then she can stay as leader. What do you think that would look like if the Liberals get to party status, but she doesn't win her seat? What do you predict will happen for her fate?
Hard to say at this point. It's an 1,800 vote lead. If the Liberals get official party status, but the leader doesn't win, that's a very difficult position to be in. The promise of Bonnie Crombie was that she was supposed to deliver Mississauga and some strength in the Peel region. And if these results hold and it, what appears to be, it's now a 7-point lead for Sylvia Gualtieri, with less than half the polls remaining to report. Meanwhile, other Liberals in other places are increasing and doing better. That would be a very difficult decision for Miss Crombie to be able to stay, regardless of what the outcome on seat counts is. We now have Rob Serjanik flipping back Ajax. There are some ridings where the Liberals are much more competitive. Stan Cho only has a 920 lead over Paul Seguil. This is another 2022 rematch. In Willowdale, we're still waiting on another couple. That one's only 35% reporting. But the Liberals are definitely doing better, and we're waiting on. There's a lot of the ridings that are still to report that we expect the Liberals to do well in. There are a few shockers.
Yeah, it looks that way. So far, the PCs have elected 20 seats, NDP at 6, Liberals at 6, Greens at 2, and then you were just looking at where all of this stands. Now, okay, so Michael Ford's, who's not running, he was in York Southweston. Which way is that going to go now that there is no incumbent there?
Yeah, that one's actually very close right now. We had that as a leaning PC seat. The PCs are winning it, but that one is very close. I think also we should also just say here that there is zero path for a non-PC majority government. So we can very confidently, we haven't actually said it yet, we can very confidently say it will be a PC majority government. The only question now remains, literally, I think we even know who the official opposition is. I think it's very likely due to insane amounts of vote efficiency. A vote efficiency I've never seen. I've never seen this level of vote efficiency in a first past the post Westminster election. But due to the insane amount of vote efficiency tonight by the Ontario NDP, they will be official opposition. I think at this point we're checking for Liberals' official party status, and I think they have that now. They've been they're going to get that. And the last question is, does Bonnie Crombie win her seat? And it's tough. It's really tough. It is taking longer for that riding to report, but the interesting thing about Mississauga is that in every election since 2008, all the Mississauga seats have voted one way. The only time they didn't vote was 2008, the 2008 federal election in Mississauga, where the Liberals won 4 of the 5 seats. Only one seat, what was at that point Mississauga Streetsville. The boundaries have changed a bit, but Mississauga Streetsville was won by the PCs. The other 4 were won by the Liberals. Fun fact, Bonnie Crombie was actually an MP in that election. She won her seat then. But election, both provincial and federal, since 2008, Mississauga always voted one way. And right now, 4 of the 6 going one way. There's 2 left. I don't know. It's a long night. There's a bit more counting left to go in those seats, but it's not looking great.
Yeah, you know,
Yeah,
that's quite embarrassing for a mayor of 10 years, right? And who was previously also an MP. It's you'd think that it'd be a landslide like we're seeing, for example, in some of those other key ridings, right? That so far has been called for the parties for the incumbents. You'd think that it wouldn't be this hard, but do you think there's a Patrick Brown factor? Because obviously the Liberal candidate, sorry, the PC candidate, Sylvia Gualtieri, is related to Patrick Brown, and we've heard, you know, the full force of his ground game. Do you think that's got to do with it, that he has the ability to mobilize in Mississauga as well?
Yes, I think that you know what we're clearly seeing here, because we are seeing Liberal gains. But Rob Serjanik has now opened up a almost 400 vote lead. In Ajax, we're seeing Paul Seguil do pretty well in Willowdale. We're seeing Don Valley North doing pretty well. We're seeing other ridings in Toronto, in the GTA, still doing well or better than they did in the last election. What is different about the Mississauga seat? What is different about Eglinton Lawrence? Is it's literally where the PCs mobilized vast armies of people to pull, because this became personal. That the poll numbers perfectly fits along with our final poll, and yet these seats that should be at least more competitive appear right now. I hesitate to say that they're going to be blowouts, but we are seeing, at least in Lakeshore and in Mississauga East Cooksville, this is unexpected, and Eglinton Lawrence, I would add as well. I'm not sure where some of the other incumbents are, but I noticed Don Valley East, Don Valley West, that they're still consistent with the model. Ajax is consistent with the model, but some of these ridings are surprising. Yeah.
Just a quick point on that too, right? So when we talk about swing in elections and as votes move and vote shares move, the Liberals lost Ajax by about 5 points in 2022. call it 41-36. Moving on to basically Mississauga East Cooksville, the seat Crombie ran at that by 3. Now, obviously, they're not Mississauga and Ajax are not the same, but they're generally considered the GTA, and there's generally a kind of uniform swing-ish in the GTA. If the Liberals were to win Ajax and not Mississauga East, or also even some of the other Mississauga seats, for example, like even Mississauga Lakeshore, they only lost that by 9. They lost Oakville by 5 as well. If you're winning Ajax, your brand and the strength of the party should be able to carry off into the West GTA. And I mean, it's still early. There is still we're still waiting on some results there in the Mississaugas. But at this point, it is very weird that the Liberals have made gains, right? I mean, even you're looking at some of the Markhams, they are more competitive in those other GTA ridings, but
it looks like the NDP were able to hold on to it there at 51% of the vote. So that's Lisa Gretzky, and the PCs didn't make the dent that they had hoped to. Windsor, where he, the iconic bridge of, between the U.S.-Canada border and of course the tariff talks that we've been hearing about nonstop. So this is very interesting because it's also showing that it resonates with people, that they think that so far the PCs are the way to lead for the next 4 years, given the Trump tariffs and what could happen with manufacturing, automotive jobs here in Ontario, which will be very devastating. With about 500,000 jobs that's, immediately win. And everything else that would happen here. So it seems like tariffs are really pulling what people are thinking in this election cycle, which is different than any other provincial cycle, a provincial election where it just comes down to care, education, affordability, all of that, transportation, infrastructure. But here we have it as it's a national issue, it seems, and it resonates high here in Ontario.
Just as kind of an interesting back and forth, kind of a split picture there, if you will. Windsor West, obviously, that there was no Liberal candidate in that seat. So you kind of have an NDP versus PC one-on-one in that case. The NDP seemed to have held that seat. That's fine. Eglinton Lawrence, again, the exact mirror image of it. A PC versus Liberal, no NDP in that seat. Of course, not a held seat by the Liberals. It was a PC seat, but an open seat. The incumbent did retire. They are currently losing it by 1 point, but they are getting closer. There are still more polls to report, so that one could flip. But it's looking a lot clearer. Like the Liberals came out in a lot more force to support Lisa Gretzky there in Windsor West. She's winning that by 10 in pretty much a blowout, as compared to Eglinton Lawrence, which is a lot closer right now. And we can't call it definitively yet, but that's a lot closer.
Yeah, and it looks like it's another third PC win here. And as we're seeing the numbers come in, you have the, PCs with, of course the numbers are still coming in, but it's 79 seats with the NDP as at 24 seats, the Liberals at 13, and the Greens at 2. So this is, it looks like it's being called for a third term. I mean, we haven't seen, the same party win 3 consecutive elections like we're seeing here. When was the last time? It was decades ago. So do you think the factor is that, this is an incumbent? Doug Ford was there during COVID as, the man of the hour on TV every day, giving the COVID breakdown. And then, of course, now this is another massive threat with the tariffs. And, I guess people see him as the right person to navigate through these tough waters. What do you think?
I think that, Doug Ford was, Captain Canada for a couple of months. We saw it in our national polls where we asked, who do you think has been the most effective representing your views to the United States and to Donald Trump? And for a number of months, Doug Ford led that. When we asked that question in December and in January, it was reduced by the time we were getting into the national federal poll in February. But yes, a lot of Canadians and a lot of Ontarians thought Doug Ford was best representing them to the United States. So yeah, being Captain Canada going into this election at a time when a lot of Liberals in Ontario were preoccupied with the federal leadership and with a potential looming federal election, certainly gave the PCs a massive advantage. We know they had the massive advantage financially, organizationally, the number of trade unions that endorsed them. All of these factors should have pointed to a much more increased mandate. Right now, I think we're sitting at 79 seats. There's a couple of surprises here, but back to my earlier point about how these swings are going, you have Rob Serjanik holding on to a lead in HX. You have Tyler Watt picking up with a pretty substantial lead in Nepean at this point, 4,176 over the PC incumbent. This is where Lisa McLeod retired, another 2022 rematch. Certainly, if based on these swings that we're seeing, we should have been seeing the same swing in the GTA on the west side and in a couple of ridings in Toronto. I think there's a few unusual results here where organizational capacity and specific targeting of particular candidates. I should note, in an election where this where it was going to be this, we have Karen McCrimmon holding on to her riding by almost 3,000 votes at this point, with over 70% of the polls reporting. Vince Gasparo has narrowed the lead now to 345 votes with 85% reporting. We don't know what these last 11 polls that are left to report. I would still expect Vince Gasparo to win here. But there are some unusual numbers. Why are the Liberals picking up Ajax and Nepean, but not picking up places in Peel region? That's going to be a difficult one for Bonnie Crombie to explain tonight on election night if these results stay as they are.
Yeah, I mean, Sylvia Gualtieri is still leading at 47%, with Bonnie Crombie at 42%. And actual votes, it's a little shy of 1,400 votes. And so, this is something you scratch your head on in terms of like, how is a mayor of a decade and then previously a councillor and an MP and really home base in Mississauga this is what's happening, given that she's the Liberal leader, and they've definitely come into party status under her leadership in this election cycle. That was a snap election, and what they were able to pull, because there was also a lot of things said about how with the federal Liberal leadership going on, that all the focus was there, and therefore the Ontario Liberals didn't have the same level of manpower they would have in an Ontario election. So the Liberals are back into status, but their leader, again, questionable, like what we saw with Del Duca, right? I mean, his numbers weren't great, and he had to step down after the 2022 election. So this will be very interesting to see what the fate of Bonnie Crombie is going to be at the end of tonight with these numbers. Absolutely. And it looks like it's all coming in. It's as expected. Do you see anything different from the numbers you guys are running from the polls to what you're seeing in the exit polls tonight?
No, I guess the NDP is a little bit higher than where we had them within margin of error on all these numbers. The PC number and the Liberal number are less than 0.5% off, but less than a quarter of the margin of error. The Greens are a little bit lower. They're 4.96, almost 5%. I think the Independents are pretty much bang on, 3.2, 3.7. I think we had them at 3.8, and they're right around there, maybe a little bit higher. Most of the polls had the Independents coming in pretty substantially. So that seems very close. I do think that the Main Street poll is going to be the closest. It looks like that there are still, those handful of ridings left to report that I believe, based on the list, that the Liberals might actually even crack over 30%. And where the NDP number is going to get closer. But this is perfectly in line with the poll. The seats, there's some real surprises here. Although I do think Eglinton Lawrence is going to continue getting tighter. It's at 90% now, 397 vote lead. We're seeing the margin in Mississauga East Cookville holding at 1,481. Mississauga Lakeshore looks pretty difficult to imagine that one swinging at 1,831 votes. There's just a handful here where it looks like Ajax, Rob Serjanik is holding on, but that one's too close to call. It's going to come down to these handful of seats, and but the provincial results at least bang on with the poll numbers, and the seat count is quite different. But there's a couple still to report that we know the Liberals will, Orleans at least, Humber River, Black Creek potentially. What else is still outstanding there, Robert, in terms of what's left to report?
Yeah, so Humber River, Black Creek is one of the ones. York Center as well. Spadina, Fort York. Spadina, Fort York, based on the results around it, I think that's very, very likely to be an NDP hold. Humber River, Black Creek, based on what we are seeing in York Southwestern and Don Valley North, and to a lesser extent in Willowdale. But Humber River, Black Creek could actually get a little bit interesting. Liberals might actually have an outside chance in that. I think that one might actually be closer to 50-50. King Vaughan is yet to report, but that is Stephen Lecce's riding. That is not expected to be competitive at all. Orleans as well. That one is also one that has extended poll closing hours. That's not until 10:30. But that one is based on what we're seeing in Ottawa, the fact that the Liberals have actually gained a P in Ottawa. That is almost a 100% chance of a Liberals holding that riding. I'd be shocked if Stephen Blais lost that riding. So again, I think there actually is some opportunity for Liberals to gain a couple more seats. Also, Eglinton Lawrence not done there yet. We got about 7 more polls to report, only about 400 votes. Again, it depends on the polls. Polls in Ontario are actually somewhat larger than than they are in federal elections, so that's definitely a doable race there. Even York Southwest and only 200 votes separate the Conservative and Liberals there. So Liberals are actually having a pretty good night in Toronto. It's just the fact that they're gaining in the outer suburbs, but the NDP are just holding their vote in the downtown core. Mississauga, Erin Mills also not done yet. There's 7 polls left to report there, and the Sear Dar is actually only about 30 to 40 votes back. 3 votes back of Sharif Sabway. Mississauga, Erin Mills. Crombie has gained. She is gaining, but she's still about 1,500 votes back. So it's actually kind of easy that at this moment the Liberal leader is not the closest seat in Mississauga. Is extremely unexpected. But again, there are different pockets of Mississauga that vote differently. Mississauga East is one of them. It could be that we're seeing results from one pocket and not the other pocket. It's a little too early to tell. There is still about a third of the polls reporting there, but at this point, obviously, this is every other leader's seat has been called. Davenport obviously called for Merritt Stiles. Doug Ford obviously won in Etobicoke North. Mike Schreiner won in Guelph. At this point, we can't say definitively whether or not Crombie will be in the legislature. So that is that's the only kind of. I mean, at this point, the Liberals are not official opposition. They didn't get that, but they're definitely going to have official party status. So that's a thing. But at this point, there is definitely there's some positives for the Liberals, and the increased vote share, but not as many positives as they had definitely hoped for tonight.
tell me something. When it comes to the polling that you've done on issues that concern Ontarians the most, what did you find when it comes to tracking? You know, we've obviously affordability has always been a thing, the economy, housing. What was the biggest thing? Was it the tariffs? Was that leading in any of the polls that you guys were doing when it comes to issues that Ontarians care about most? And is that what is correlating with the PC win, or like what? So how can we connect the issues you've polled to what we're seeing with the exit polls tonight?
Yeah, I think that you know, our polls, most polls showed that the tariffs, the concerns with the tariffs, on top of the fact that almost every pocketbook issue was leading the top concerns of most Ontario voters, most Canadian voters, right? Very similar to national issues. You know, it's unusual to have a provincial election that is so focused on issues that are not provincial issues. This is we didn't hear. Sure, the Liberals and the NDP tried to make this election about healthcare. Normally, provincial elections are about healthcare and education. This one was about, you know, tariffs and national issues, because going in, we knew most Ontarians were caring about affordability already. There was concerns around the economy, jobs in the economy, and that's what gave the PCs a tremendous advantage that they already had, organizationally, financially. These other provincial issues could not break through, and that's why we are where we are. I should say, you know, that that result in Mississauga Mills again points to the fact that this is a very unusual election, and some of those targeting factors where the Conservative machine targeted Bonnie Crombie and Gasparo and Eglinton Lawrence, Mississauga Lakeshore, etc. Because when you see Lee Fairclough right next door blowing out her PC incumbent opponent, when you see Kassir Dar within a handful of votes in another Mississauga riding, when you see Rob Serjanik potentially picking up Ajax and Tyler Watt picking up Nepean, and you see the Liberal vote share increase close to 30% at this point. Some of these results are highly unusual, but you know, full credit to the PC machine for targeting these candidates, but Liberals make gains. NDP held everything they had. I expected kind of the opposite, to be honest. And still a handful of seats to report. The Liberals will make gains. Going to be very, very difficult for Bonnie Crombie to make the case for her to stay on if she can't win her riding at this point. And you know, there's lower reporting coming out of Mississauga, East Cooksville, than some of the other Mississaugas, but this lead is should be a great concern if you're in Bonnie Crombie headquarters right now.
And just a quick note on that, Kassir Dar has actually taken the lead in Mississauga Erin Mills.
Wow. Yeah. That is stunning.
And when it comes to Eglinton Lawrence, it's a tie at 48% for both Michelle Cooper for the PCs and for the Liberal Vince Gasparo. They're at a tie right now. So just about the advanced polls and then the mail-in ballots. The mail-in ballots will be counted this evening. Is it after, like it's being counted right now, so we could see those coming in as well? Because could that shift depending on, I'm not sure how many mail-in ballots there were in this election cycle.
I didn't follow that number particularly. I believe that all ballots are counted on election night. Everything was, because it's all tabulators, everything starts being counted at 7 p.m. And so a lot of that vote that we saw right at the beginning, that was that was advanced vote and mail-in ballot, I believe. I don't think there is a lag like in some other provincial elections that we see with or like what we see in the United States with mail-in ballots. Most of the vote should be reported. The only thing we're waiting for is those additional ridings. This is now a majority. I'll point out that the PC party sits at 77 seats, exactly the number that they had at dissolution. 5 less than they won in 2022. Now they've just picked up and gone to 78. So and are sitting. It's starting to come down closer to 43 for the PCs and inching up towards 30 for the Liberals, and the NDP sitting at 18.5. So the polls precise. The polls were precise. The seat counts that we're seeing are unexpected. Some of them, and they're not over, but they're starting to be close to be over, but certainly closer than what we expected in some of these races.
Yeah, that's definitely the case. So when it comes to Brampton, all the PCs held their seats. When it comes to Peel Region, Mississauga still a massive battle. Again, I'm going to go through, Mississauga Centre, the PC lead is there, 47%, the Liberals at 41%. When it comes to, what the riding Bonnie Crombie is running in, she's still at 42%, and Sylvia Gutteri of the PCs, she's at 46%. So we're watching that. Mississauga, Erin Mills, well, you have the Liberals and the PCs at a tie right now, 44%. So that's Kassir Dar and Sharif Sabawi, which is Sharif is the incumbent. He's at a tie there with the Liberals. So that's a neck to neck. Mississauga Lakeshore, Rudy Kazadi at 47%. It looks like it's there. And then Elizabeth Mendez from the Liberals, she's at 43%. And then Mississauga Malton, which is Deepak Anand has been called. He's the PC incumbent. He just won his 3rd election at 50% of the vote, with the Liberals behind at 38%. So those were called. So so you got your Bramptons, you got Mississauga Malton, the other 5 Mississauga seats still up. With a massive fight, and let's see what happens, because this was you'd think it would have been a shoo-in for the Liberals because of Bonnie Crombie as the incumbent. It's not incumbent, but the mayor of Mississauga. So we're watching that closely, but yeah, definitely the Liberals have after 2 election cycles of being out in the cold, of not having party status, not having the funding levels. It looks like tonight they're finally back in party status, which gives them, that gives them funding. It gives them a little bit more momentum and ground game for further elections. And the NDP, I mean, we're seeing over there, it's about 24 ridings, which is less than what they had in the last election. So it looks like, the NDP are trickling down, but still potentially definitely going to be opposition status, and that's under Merit Styles. This is her first election as the NDP leader, and Bonnie Crombie's first election as the Liberal leader. And the Liberals have already changed. She's the second leader after Kathleen Wynne. There was Stephen Del Duca in 2022, and heavily campaigned on healthcare. And I think her biggest election platform was that the Liberals will get you a family doctor within 4 years. That's specifically what was heard almost every day at the campaign trail. So let's see, what that means. It's a very close call for her and her faith of her status as the leader, because she's going to have to, really, really explain why she's not winning her seat if she doesn't win her seat tonight. And of course, that's huge for Sylvia Gutteri, who would beat, as the PC leader, beat the Liberal leader in the seat. So that would be, you know, cabinet position, I would assume, for her, because she just took out, you know, the Liberal leader. So that's definitely a big deal. So we're watching that very closely. Are there any other polls that you're looking at in terms of ridings that, you know, are key seats that we're seeing anything different than what we expected?
Not, you know, the lead in Ajax for Rob Serjanik is holding. The Michelle Cooper now leads by 212 votes in Eglinton Lawrence, with just 2 polls remaining to report. We don't know where those polls are. This one could end up being a nail biter or even a recount. Kasir Dar leads by just 8 votes, with 43 of 48 polls reporting. That is, again, going to be a nail biter. We don't know where those 5 remaining polls are. What I'll note is, you know, Tyler Watt where are the Liberals picking up right now? Tyler Watt in Nepean winning by almost 4,700 votes. That one was unexpected. Ajax, Canada Carleton, where Karen McCrimmon was expected to be extremely in tight. I'll note now Michelle Cooper now leads by 152 votes in Eglinton Lawrence. This one with just 1 poll reporting. So this will be, right now it's within 1%. So this would be an automatic recount as it sits, unless this last poll flips it or extends that leads slightly for the PC party. That's a shocker. And Sylvia Gualtieri continues to, with 11 polls still to report. Now, that's a lot of polls. We don't know where those polls are. That number could flip. The only thing I will say is, you know, all of Mississauga yesterday morning was reported that by the PC pollster that they were leading by 12 across Mississauga. Only one riding in Mississauga Malton is leading by 12. Every other race is within a couple of points. This is not the massive blowout they projected for Mississauga, although on seats, there's some surprises here. I'm not sure that they were expecting to have such a close contest against Kasir Dar. But yeah, that one's, there's a couple of here that are going to be recounts, and I expect a couple of the ones that are still to report will change these numbers a little bit. Right now, the province-wide polls tending towards 43 for the PCs, nowhere near that 50 mark that was being spun. The Liberals at 29.63, approaching 30, the number that everybody said no, absolutely not. There's no chance the Liberals are close to 30. So we're happy with our numbers, and with the ridings that are still to report. I think it's going to get even closer. And the seat counts are unusual.
Yeah, I will say that. I mean, I've been doing seat modeling for quite a bit here, and I don't know. I don't really know what model we could have built to get this seat count. These seats are abnormal tonight. Normally there's ever 1 or 2 surprises, but there's probably at least 15 surprises in terms of seats here tonight. So, and it's weird because some seats are exactly what the model said, like literally exactly the number the model said, and others are completely different. And it's very weird when like some like Ajax model had that as a toss-up, and that's exactly what that looks like. The model, like the model in a lot of seats is bang on, except it's just missing in Mississauga. And I will just kind of note with that some of the networks have called Mississauga East for the Conservatives. They are projecting that Bonnie Crombie will lose her seat. So that is what some people are projecting. It's a little early, but it does not look good. But the Liberals are actually winning in Mississauga and Erin Mills. So and obviously Eglinton Lawrence is very close. We don't have Humber River Black Creek yet. The Liberals could actually win that seat. And then obviously Orleans. So at this point, the NP have pretty much held all of their Southern Ontario seats. They held Waterloo. They held the 2 Hamilton. Actually, they have lost Hamilton Mountain. That's it. It was a retiring incumbent. They lost that seat, but they have held the 3 Niagaras. They won the 3 Londons that they hold, and they won Windsor West, which they held, and they didn't win Windsor-Tecumseh, but they didn't hold that one anyway. With a couple of losses in the north, the NDP are okay. This is not as bad of a night for them as it could have been, and not as bad of a night for them as it would have been if you had said, hey, if you had told me, hey, they're at 18, 19%, I'd be like, yeah, okay, they're at like 15 seats, and they're well past that at 26. So very weird. There's very clearly a lot of strategic voting going on, abundantly clear in a lot of these Southwestern Ontario seats. And then the seats that don't have the NDP incumbents, the Liberals are massively overperforming. The Liberals have the gains in the seats that aren't held by the NDP, but in the seats that are held by the NDP, there seems to be a ton of Liberals, or, well, what would be projected to be Liberals according to the model, coming out and protecting them and helping defend them in that case.
Hearing the same thing, that it looks like Bonnie Crombie is going to lose her seat. There is about 1,500 vote difference from Sylvia Gualtieri, who's running for the PCs, who's leading compared to the Liberal leader, Bonnie Crombie. And Ymedia is at Mississauga-Malton for Deepak Anand, who just won his 3rd election. He won under the PCs in 2018, 2022, and it's the only Mississauga seat right now that is firmly called. And so any moment now we're going to go to our person, Gurpreet Ji, who's at that campaign I guess celebration for Deepak Anand, who just won his 3rd term. You know, he led, and it wasn't as close as what we're seeing in all the other seats in Mississauga. You know, and then of course we have our people there in the Toronto Congress Centre as well, where the PCs are, you know, having their celebration. And of course, when the polls, the numbers finalize, and we're going to bring you what the leaders have to say. You know, the winner, it's a PC win. That's what the numbers are looking at. So we'll definitely bring it for, you know, Premier Ford for a 3rd term when he does his speech tonight, his victory speech. We're going to go live there, and we're looking forward to seeing what the other leaders have to say for this election cycle. And you know, it's kind of bittersweet. It seems like for Marit Stiles, who has right now less seats than what she had in 2022, and very bittersweet for Bonnie Crombie, who's brought her party into party status right now. You know, with 14 seats called, you know, just from shy of like 7 seats up to 14 seats. So she doubled her seat count, which is, you know, far more successful than what we saw just a year and a half ago in 2022 under Stephen Del Duca. But it looks like she's not going to be winning her riding. And that reminds me of John Tory. Do you remember when he was the PC leader and he did not win his seat? And that was at different times. So do we have, okay, so we're going to go straight to Deepak Anand's campaign in Mississauga-Malton. He just won his 3rd election. Hello, how are you?
And thank you for your community service. You know, through you, we are able to reach out to whole Ontario, whole Canada, and in fact, across the border. So, you know, for your community service. These things cost a lot. And as always, the Luigi says, you know, he always complains about the higher labor cost as well. He says, I truly believe in the people who work with us. So thank you for your thank you, Luigi, for always doing this for the community.
Right, so there you go. That is Deepak Anand. He won his 3rd term, PC incumbent, and that's Mississauga-Malton. We are watching all the other Mississauga seats as well, which is very close in some of them, but not so so lucky or good what it appears for Bonnie Crombie, the Liberal leader. We're going to, of course, track that. And if you are to look at the map of Ontario, it's a massive blue seats. You know, it's what was expected in the polls that's been done throughout this election cycle. This is an election cycle like no other, where the main topics were of tariffs, which is really a federal trade issue when it comes to our biggest trading partner, the United States. You know, almost 80% of Canadian exports go to the United States. We saw at a time where Prime Minister Justin Trudeau stepped down in the beginning of this year with the rhetoric we've heard from President Trump about Canada becoming the 51st state, continuously with 25% tariffs going into effect, as President Trump has said, on March 4th, and then March 12th, we're talking about 25% on tariffs on steel and aluminum, which adds up to a 50% tariff when you add it with the 25% going in March 4th, and then March 12th, another 25% on steel and aluminum. And then there is the April disparity in terms of the trade deficit, where President Trump has said that he's going to do reciprocal tariffs. So it's, and then the CUSMA is supposed to be negotiated next year, 2026. But of course, I think the talks will happen this year, but we don't know yet what's going to happen federally. We're probably going to go into a federal election very soon when the Liberals have their leader in place. And so we're seeing at a time where you had PC leader Doug Ford, Premier Doug Ford, who's won 2 elections, massive majorities, one bigger than the other. He was really the central figure in this entire election cycle as the leader that went to Washington, D.C. Perhaps not as much success as he had hoped in terms of meeting with I don't know if he expected to meet with President Trump, but it's just the fact that he went out there, he led the 13 premiers as the chair. These were the numbers that we were projecting in terms of the Liberals making a comeback. And really, the conversation changed halfway through this election cycle that, given that everybody believed that the PCs would win their third mandate, that really it's the race to becoming the official opposition, right? Is it going to be the NDP holding on for a third term as official opposition, or is it going to be the Liberals that will take them over with what we saw with momentum for Bonnie Crombie? But it looks like, personally for her, it doesn't look so good tonight. It's being called that she's potentially not going to win her riding tonight. So we look forward to hearing her speech, which is probably going to be very bittersweet. What else are you seeing coming through that that are interesting to note? That now we're an hour and 20 minutes after the polls have closed, so we're almost there.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, our numbers are our final poll. We had 43.7 to 29.7. Liberals are at 29.6. Conservatives at 43, right on the dot. That's about as good as you can get. If you had told me that was going to be the top line seat count, but the Liberals were going to get 14 seats, I'd say, oh, did the NDP get like 6? But the NDP have 25 seats. That is a massive performance for them, far more than we expected. But I mean, again, the top line looks about right, and there seems to be some very clear swings away from the Conservatives in ridings that the NDP are clearly gaining vote share in the seats they hold. Just for example, here I'll use my riding that I currently live in. In Niagara Centre, Jeff Birch, he's winning 42 to 37 in that riding. In 2022, he won at 39-37. So the PCs are flat. Jeff Birch is up 3 points. So, and then again, now I'd be like, okay, that's fine. You can explain that's fine. But that's happening as the NDP are down 5 points province-wide. Going up a little bit, St. Catharines, exact same story. NDP actually gaining vote share from 2022. You cross further to the U.S., basically to the U.S. border, Niagara Falls, exact same thing. Wayne Gates actually won his seat by 12 points last time. He's actually winning it by 20. All 3 ridings, NDP actually gaining vote share compared to 2022. Now, go from Niagara deeper into Ontario, Niagara West. The NDP had 20% in Niagara West in 2022. They're at 16.5 tonight. They're down 4. The Liberals are up 4. This is where you're seeing very weird swings. And this is, again, same thing, Flamborough, Glanbrook. The Liberals in second there, they were in third last time, right? There is a lot of cases, and you're seeing this across the board, where the NDP are gaining vote share that they shouldn't be gaining in seats that they hold, and they're losing vote. They're getting absolutely destroyed in seats that they don't hold to the Liberals. And I think there's only really one way to see that. I think it's very clear that those are very clearly strategically voting Liberals. Like there is no real way to view that anything differently. That being said, though, again, if you had told me that the Liberals were going to be winning Ajax, and they are actually, they're currently winning it by 300. If you told me the Liberals would win Ajax, I'd be like, oh, did Bonnie Crombie win all of Mississauga? And that those regions, they're probably only going to lose those regions about 5, 6, 7 points, something along the lines. I math right off the top of my head here, but that's probably what they're looking at, losing those regions, and they are going to win 1, maybe 2 seats in those regions. You're going to win 1 to 2 seats, and the Conservatives are going to win all of it. That's your majority right there.
Hey, Robert, sorry to interrupt you. We're going to go live to Bonnie Crombie. She's making a live announcement. Take a look.
Wow. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Thank you. Hello. Good evening, everyone. And thank you for being here. I want to thank each and every one of you for everything you have done in the last 20 8 days. You prove them wrong. The Ontario Liberal Party is back to official party status, and that's a big milestone. But it gets better. We increased our share of the vote substantially to 30%. Double digits over the NDP, right? So this is a building block for us. It is a momentum that we can continue to push forward and to grow, right? So tonight, let's celebrate all our new MPPs that we're going to bring back, and let's celebrate coming back to party status. So that tomorrow we can get back to work making sure those other guys do their jobs. Look, voters have given Doug Ford another mandate tonight. Smaller, but nonetheless. But many, many of you are asking for a strong voice to hold him accountable as Premier. And you can count on me, okay? So I'll say this tonight, Doug, we'll be watching. Yep. We know Ontario can do so much better, right? And you know I'm not going to slow down, not for 1 second when it comes up to standing up for the people in this province, right? I'm going to continue to fight for our public health care system every single day, right? Doug, you promised a lot of things during this campaign, and one of them was to get people more family doctors. And I'm going to hold you to it. The Ontario Liberal Party is going to hold you to it, right? because the people of Ontario deserve more than they've gotten from you over the last 7 years. You promised to protect Ontario, but you neglected Ontario. And we're going to make sure that you go back to protecting us. We'll make sure that you protect our public health care system and our Greenbelt and everyone trying to get ahead in this province who doesn't have a direct line to your office. Ontario, I'm here. I am with you. And I commit to you today that I will stay on as that. All right, I'll tell you again. Okay. I commit to you that I'll stay on as Ontario Liberal leader so that I can keep fighting for you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
There you go. That is Liberal leader Bonnie Crombie, who is saying that she will stay on even though her own seat is potentially not hers. It looks like it's going to be a PC seat. So far, the PCs have won their third majority election here, with the PCs at 63 and 16 more, so that would be 79 seats. The NDP seats, 8 more seats in terms of leading, so that's 25 seats. The Liberals, 10 seats have been elected so far, leading in 4, a total of 14, and Greens 2 seats that they were able to maintain. But what's interesting is there's a difference between when it comes to the popular vote and the electoral vote. The PCs, of course, are leading with 4% of the total voter share that came out to vote in this cycle. The NDP at 18%. And the Liberals at 29%. So even though the Liberals have more votes in terms of the voter share at 29% compared to 18% of NDP, the NDP, when it comes to electoral votes, has been able to be in the official opposition status at 25 seats. And so we're watching that come down. Of course, we're going to go live as soon as PC leader Doug Ford, Premier Doug Ford, who is going to have his victory speech coming on very shortly. We're going to go live there. And as soon as you have Merritt Stiles, who's the NDP leader, when she goes live, we're going to bring that to you as well. This is a night that, you know, it is a winter election. It was a snap election, a year and a half ahead of schedule because of what we've been seeing with the south of the border with Trump tariffs, and this is something that Doug Ford campaigned highly on. So what do you think so far, Robert?
Yeah, I mean, again, the polling, the numbers look pretty much exactly as we expected. We expected about a 12, 13, 14 point win, and that's exactly what happened. Seat count, not exactly as we expected. We did expect Crombie to win her seat, but that did not happen. And the Liberals are currently winning the other Mississauga seat. There's 5 polls left to report in Mississauga. Erin Mills, they are currently winning that one. That's the only seat they are winning. Eglinton Lawrence, too close to call, only about 200 vote lead for the PCs there, with a few more polls. Actually, all the polls are reporting, so that means that's going to a recount unless there's some other mobile polls or something that haven't reported there. York Southwestern, about the same, about a 200 vote lead there, 2 polls left. That one is a possibility as well. And then Humber River, Black Creek, no result there yet. That was one of the ones that had the extended polling hours. And then obviously Orleans as well. Same thing. Stephen Blay, no results there, but that's the incumbent Liberal. So we definitely expect the Liberals. Right now they're sitting at about 14 seats total. I very much expect them to get more than that. But at the same point, though, they are defending Ajax. They are opening up a couple hundred vote lead in Ajax. And they've made some pickups tonight. The Liberals have gained seats. The NDP have not gained seats. The NDP mostly holding their own, only really losing Hamilton Mountain to the Conservatives. And that's pretty much about it, right? I mean, Doug Ford has won another majority. At what cost, though? He's at 79 seats. He's maybe going to gain 1 or 2 more. King Vaughan, at this point, that's a virtual guarantee to go PC. they could win Humber River Black Creek. I think it's going to be actually based on the results we're seeing. That could actually be pretty close between the Liberals and the Liberals and the PCs in Humber River Black Creek. So there is a possibility that the Liberals could, the Conservatives could gain 1 or 2 more seats. But it seems at this point that the Conservatives will win. Less seats than they won in 2022. So yes, Doug Ford called an early election, and yes, he did win it. But at this point, you would hope to have a stronger mandate. He gained it's looking like about 1-ish% provincially. We'll have to see if that holds. Maybe he might. I think that's probably going to stick around that 43 line. Maybe go a bit bigger depending on what's outstanding in other polls. I can't tell exactly, but that's probably about where it's going to sit. It's not going to go up to 44 or probably go down into 52, maybe 52 point something, but that's roughly where they're going to sit. But at this point, though, they made some gains. They've lost seats. Gotta love our electoral system here, but that's the results, right? I think Doug Ford made a big gamble by going a year early, almost a year and a half early, and it's paid off. But I think the loss of seats there's going to be some questions asked about, was this really the best decision to do this now? Should we have maybe if we had waited, we could have gained seats or not? But at this point, they wanted another 4 years. They got another 4 years. We'll have to see how the next 4 years go for them. And Crombie, and as we saw there, she's vowing to stay on as party leader. Even though she has lost her seat. Generally not the most tenable position. Not a lot of party leaders who lose their seat have stayed on. It's not looking, we'll have to see. The next days will decide if Crombie remains leader or not. Obviously, with political parties, there's a lot of internal things that go on with them. I wouldn't know any of that stuff, but this is the thing, right? The Ontario Liberal Party is going to have some important choices to make in the next few months and few years. But a lot is going to be overshadowed by the federal election, which seems to be happening. We're rapidly approaching that. We're possibly only about 2 or so weeks away from a federal election being called. So that one will be another interesting election that we're going to have as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Robert, for that breakdown. And of course, in studio, it's election time, and we're going through all the updates and seat-by-seat count with the 124 ridings. And in studio, we have the group editor of Ymedia, Ymedia Jaswal, who's joined us. Hello and welcome.
Thank you so much, Ramonaji. Great to be with all of you. It's a Ymedia election night today. And once again, third consecutive majority for the PCs. Doug Ford has won the third consecutive majority. And just for viewers' benefit, I'd like to tell you that yes, very shortly, Doug Ford, he's going to give his speech. He's going to deliver his speech. Let's see what he says. But I want your take on Bonnie Crombie. I mean, she's lost her own seat. She still wants to stay as leader. I mean, there was a discussion that she could be, the official opposition. But here we are. I mean, third-party status once again. Nothing much has changed for the Liberal under Bonnie Crombie.
Well, it's bittersweet for her because she brought her party back into status, right, with 14 seat count, and but she lost her seat, and that's shocking because she was the mayor of Mississauga for 10 years, and then was a councillor for 4 years there previous to that, and then she was an MP. So this is, and then really she ran against Sylvia Gualtieri, who is the PC candidate who's won tonight, and she's related to Mayor Patrick Brown and PC MPP Rudy Cozzetti. So you're seeing a ground game that happened in her riding. Perhaps she was out campaigning throughout Ontario and maybe didn't pay as much attention to what's going on in her riding, although there was some speculation, and she was asked many times on the election campaign that, does she believe she's going to win her own seat? And she said, absolutely, I'm going to win my own seat. And so here we have it. She did say she's going to stay on. Of course, we'll see what the party decides to do. It is bittersweet for her because, she's the second Liberal leader since Kathleen Wynne in 2018, massive loss that took the party out of, from being the official, like the party that was leading the Ontario government for 15 years to no party status in 2018, and then again under Stephen Del Duca in 2022, and now party status, but the leader doesn't have a seat.
Yeah, I mean, on Bonnie, I think I clearly remember when she said she's going to keep her about $10 million of fundraising. I think the party wasn't prepared. First things first, not enough of fundraising, I guess. That wasn't. Secondly, they weren't, the candidates weren't even there. Right until the last before the elections, they were scrambling around to find candidates. He was in Mississauga, but I don't think so. The candidates had organization. On the other side, you had most of the candidates in their third election. So on the PCs, they had gens. So the party, I think the first challenge was fundraising. The challenge was, the candidates. There weren't candidates in place, and right up until the last minutes, they were scrambling around to put candidates in all the ridings. So they already knew that it'll be a challenge. And many of the ridings that I saw, like Praveen Sarkaria, we already knew there was no way he's going to lose that. So we have Doug Ford, so we're going to take him to live. Doug Ford. Yeah, and we have Premier Doug Ford. He's there, so he's going to talk about what he would say. We're going to listen to Doug Ford very shortly. So here's Premier Doug Ford. Here's the PC party. So let's see what he has to say.
It's a victory. It's the third victory for the PCs under Doug Ford, and so it's although he has less seats than he had in the previous election, we're still seeing the countdown, and that's only because obviously the Liberals took some from the NDP, and it looks like some from the PCs. The Greens kept their 2 seats, and so yeah, but it is a 4-year mandate, and this is the same 4 years that he said he needs to be able to go up against Trump tariffs that are going to come into play very soon.
During my time in office, I hope I've proven I will work with anyone, I will work with everyone to get things done. Now, as we stare down
while we're waiting for the video,
Trump's tariffs, I will continue to do just that. I will work with every level of government and every political stripe, because fighting back against Donald Trump, standing up for Canada, it will take a full Team Ontario effort, it will take a full Team Canada effort. Friends, we've made so much progress together. Over 1 million more people are working today than when we were elected in 2018. We've attracted over $70 billion in new investments into our economy, in new auto and battery plants, in our manufacturing sector, in new life science facilities. In Ontario's growing tech sector. Now together, we have to fight hard to protect our progress. This election, we ask the people for a mandate, a strong mandate that outlives and outlasts the Trump administration. A mandate to do whatever it takes to protect Ontario. Well, friends, the people have spoken. They're ready to stand up for Canada. This election, we ask the people for a mandate to make Ontario the most competitive place in the G7 to invest, create jobs, and do business. The people said yes. We ask the people for a mandate to unleash the awesome awesome economic potential of the Ring of Fire, the people said yes. We asked the people for a mandate to build up our economy by tearing down internal trade barriers, and the people said yes. We asked the people for a mandate to cut red tape and the excuses, streamline approvals, and build things faster. The people said yes. We asked the people for a mandate to get the federal government out of our way so we can get shovels in the ground on the projects that will build the true North Strong and Free. The people said yes. We asked the people for a mandate to build pipelines, to build rail lines and transmissions, to diversify our trade, find new markets, new customers, and rely less on the old ones. Yes. We asked the people for a mandate our trade, find new markets, new customers, and rely less on the old one. The people said yes. We asked the people for a mandate to clean up our streets, crack down on crime, end encampments, and protect schools and daycares from drug injection sites. The people said yes. And we asked the people for a mandate to build Highway 413, the Bradford Bypass, Highway 7, Highway 11, Highway 69, to bring sanity back to bike lanes, to tunnel the 401, to upload Ottawa LRT, and build the future of GO Transit across Greater Toronto Area. The people said yes. This is our plan to protect Ontario, a plan that offers big and bold ideas. It's a vision for the future of our great province and a vision for the future of our economy. Ontario is blessed with everything we need to succeed, the best and most skilled workers anywhere in the world. A pipeline of world-class talent with 70,000 STEM graduates each and every single year. Northern Ontario's enormous God-given potential, offering every critical mineral the world wants, every critical mineral the world needs, and one of the cleanest, greenest grids in the world, with the first small modular nuclear reactors in the G7. You know, folks, it's no wonder the world has their eyes on us. They're looking at Ontario with envy. Now, it's up to us to unlock our potential, roll up our sleeves to get to work. We'll retrain workers for better jobs and bigger paychecks. We'll retool companies for new customers and new markets. We'll reshore supply chains to bring good jobs back home. We'll rebuild roads and highways to keep people working and keep our economy competitive. Friends, this election, we promise to do whatever it takes to protect Ontario. And I'm so proud of the support we received. Together, we made more inroads into new communities, with more people seeing themselves reflected in our party, in our priorities. A record number of unions, including first-time supporters like our great firefighters, our great police, uniformed locals, hospitality workers, and more trade unions, mayors from every region of Ontario, and everyday hardworking people in Thunder Bay, Timmins, and Sault Ste. Marie, in Eastern Ontario, Hamilton and Windsor, in Brampton and Mississauga. Your support is truly humbling. I will never, ever take it for granted. I will never stop working for you, because We're in a battle for the future of our province, for the future of our country. I promise you this, I will wake up every day and I will fight like I've never fought before. I will fight for every auto worker in Windsor, Woodstock, St. Thomas, and Oakville, in Brampton, Ingersoll, Oshawa, Alliston, and Cambridge. I will fight for every miner in Timmins, Thunder Bay, and Sudbury. I will fight for every steelmaker in Sault Ste. Marie, Nanticoke, and Hamilton. I will fight for every worker on the factory floor, every student starting their career, and every senior starting their retirement. I will fight for First Nations communities, for newcomers, for everyone in Ontario looking to get ahead. I will fight for you. This election was about who we are, about the future we choose for ourselves. Donald Trump thinks he can break us. He thinks he can divide and conquer, pit region against region. Donald Trump doesn't know what we know. He is underestimating us. He is underestimating the resilience of the Canadian people, the Canadian spirit. Make no mistake, Canada won't start a fight with the U.S., but you better believe we're ready to win one. So, thank you. Thank you, everyone. So, folks, let me be clear. Canada will never, ever be the 51st state. And Canada is not for sale. Over the last weeks and months, I've seen the best of our province, the best of our country. Hardworking people standing up for what's decent, for what's right. It's you, the people, who will get us through this, who will fight for our future. Together, we're going to emerge from this stronger and more united than ever before. From coast to coast to coast, we're going to stand together. We're going to fight. We're going to fight for our province. We're going to fight for our country. Together, we're going to protect Ontario. I want to thank you, and may God bless the people of Canada. May God bless the people of Ontario. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
So that was Doug Ford for you. He seems to be pretty delighted. Of course, he would be delighted. So that's the breaking news. Ymedia, breaking news from Ymedia Newsroom. Ymedia Political Sensex. PC wins the third consecutive majority. That's the big news here. So Doug Ford, he's very delighted. Why he shouldn't be? He's won the third straight majority. We have Ramona ji with us. We have Robert with us. And to dissect his speech, why don't we go straight to Robert. Robert, what do you have to say about this? You heard Doug Ford. He seems to be pretty happy. What to say?
Yeah, I mean that's your pretty standard Doug Ford. Well, we've seen him speak a lot since 2018, so that's a pretty standard stump speech for him. I mean, I would say obviously you win tonight, you get a majority, you're good for another 4 years. They had set expectations very, very high in terms of seat counts. They're talking about absolutely decimating other parties. Some projections at 90, some even had them earlier at 100 seats. That had kind of come down a little bit. They were hoping for, at some points of this election, they were hoping for almost 50% vote share. We were talking 46, 47, 48. They are rapidly closing in. Like they're at 42.9 now. I think they're going to stay probably somewhere around there. Maybe they inch up a tad, but I think they're probably going to stay somewhere around the 42.9 mark. So, no, I mean, I think honestly, it's a very that's what we're looking at in terms of the in like this was pretty much as expected. The only thing that wasn't really as expected was the seat share. We had expected based like if you had given me these results and you said, okay, the Conservatives are going to have 42.9, Liberals are going to have 29, I'll just basically just shy of 30. I would have said, oh yeah, Crombie definitely won her seat. Maybe they picked up a couple seats in the GTA, but the only Liberal gain in the GTA right now, and all the polls are reporting in Mississauga, Aaron Mills, the Conservatives have a 20-vote lead. That is 1,000,000% going to a recount. There are going to be lawyers involved in that one, but the only GTA, not Toronto, the only GTA gain for the Liberals is the riding of Ajax. So that's where the seat, like the math looks pretty good, right? We expected Liberals to make gains, we expected the NDP to lose, but there very clearly seems to be strategic voting massively benefiting the NDP in the seats they hold. And there definitely seems to be some strategic voting actually helping the Liberals in some seats, but not enough, right? I mean, we talked earlier the example of Eglinton Lawrence and Windsor West. Windsor West, the Liberal candidate backed out. In Eglinton Lawrence, the NDP candidate backed out. The idea was that it was going to help both. I mean, it wasn't any sort of agreement or anything. It just kind of happened that they dropped out, and then the expectation was that was going to help the other candidates.
Robert, my apologies. Didn't want to interrupt you, but we'll carry on this discussion. We have MPP Amarjot Sandhu. So from candidate to MPP, Amarjot Sandhu ji, a warm welcome, sir. ਕੀ ਹਾਲ ਹੈ ਠੀਕ ਹੈ ਜੀ?
ਹਾਂਜੀ ਜੋਤੀ ਭਾਈ ਸਤਿ ਸ਼੍ਰੀ ਅਕਾਲ ਜੀ ਬਹੁਤ ਬਹੁਤ ਧੰਨਵਾਦ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਤੇ ਵਾਈ ਮੀਡੀਆ ਸੁਣ ਰਹੇ ਸਾਰੇ ਭੈਣਾਂ ਭਰਾਵਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਸਤਿ ਸ਼੍ਰੀ ਅਕਾਲ ਜੀ
ਸਤਿ ਸ਼੍ਰੀ ਅਕਾਲ ਜੀ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਇੱਕ ਵਾਰ ਫੇਰ ਬਹੁਤ ਬਹੁਤ ਮੁਬਾਰਕਾਂ ਬਰੈਂਪਟਨ ਵੈਸਟ ਲਗਾਤਾਰ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਤੀਸਰੀ ਵਾਰ ਸ਼ਾਨਦਾਰ ਜਿੱਤ ਹਾਸਲ ਕੀਤੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਹੈ ਕੀ ਕਹਿਣਾ ਚਾਹੋਗੇ
ਕਰਨਾ ਜੀ ਆਮ ਐਕਸਟ੍ਰੀਮਲੀ ਗ੍ਰੇਟਫੁਲ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਬਰੈਂਪਟਨ ਵੈਸਟ ਦੇ ਲੋਕ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਨੇ ਤੀਜੀ ਵਾਰ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਆਪਣਾ ਟਰਸਟ ਤੇ ਸਪੋਰਟ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਦਿੱਤੀ ਆ ਜੀ ਹਮੇਸ਼ਾ ਆਈ ਵਿਲ ਬੀ ਫੋਰਐਵਰ ਗ੍ਰੇਟਫੁਲ ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਆਪਾਂ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਇਹ ਇਹਸਾਨ ਕਦੀ ਭੁੱਲ ਨਹੀਂ ਸਕਦੇ ਕਿ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੇ ਐਡੇ ਵੱਡੇ ਨੰਬਰ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਾ ਕੇ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਵੋਟਾਂ ਪਾਈਆਂ ਤੇ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਬਹੁਤ ਵੱਡੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਲੀਡ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਜਿਤਾਇਆ ਜੀ ਸੋ ਹਮੇਸ਼ਾ ਬਰੈਂਪਟਨ ਵੈਸਟ ਦੇ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਦਾ ਧੰਨਵਾਦ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਤੇ ਖਾਸ ਮੈਂ ਆਪਣੇ ਧੰਨਵਾਦ ਕਰਨਾ ਚਾਹੂੰਗਾ ਵਾਲੰਟੀਅਰਸ ਦਾ ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਆਪਾਂ ਜਾਣਦੇ ਕਿ ਵੈਦਰ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਇਸ ਵਾਰ ਬਹੁਤ ਠੰਡਾ ਸੀ ਸਨੋ ਵੀ ਕਾਫੀ ਪਈ ਆ ਸੋ ਵਾਲੰਟੀਅਰ ਡੋਰ ਟੂ ਡੋਰ ਜਾ ਕੇ ਜੀ ਪਿਛਲੇ ਲਗਾਤਾਰ 1 ਮਹੀਨੇ ਤੋਂ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਆਪਾਂ 45,000 ਡੋਰਸ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ ਜੀ ਬਰੈਂਪਟਨ ਵੈਸਟ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਉਹ ਕਵਰ ਕੀਤੇ ਆ ਤੇ ਉਸ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਫਿਰ ਦੁਬਾਰਾ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਨੌਕ ਕੀਤੇ ਆ ਸਪੋਰਟਰਸ ਸੋ ਸਾਰੇ ਵਾਲੰਟੀਅਰਸ ਦਾ ਬਹੁਤ ਬਹੁਤ ਧੰਨਵਾਦ ਕਰਦੇ ਆ ਤੇ ਮੋਸਟ ਇੰਪੋਰਟੈਂਟਲੀ ਬਰੈਂਪਟਨ ਵੈਸਟ ਦੇ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਦਾ ਤੇ ਪ੍ਰਮਾਤਮਾ ਦਾ ਧੰਨਵਾਦ ਕਰਦੇ ਆ ਕਿ ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਦੁਬਾਰਾ ਮੌਕਾ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਜੀ
Once again, compliments, congrats on the third straight victory. If I may ask you, what would you do immediately? Because here we are, as your premier, as your leader, he's been mentioning that we are facing the
elections to have more candidates and all of that. But she doesn't have her seat, so she can't even be in there. So her fate's going to be decided, I guess, by her party, even though she's just going to stay on as leader. Whereas we saw in the last election, Stephen Del Duca, he resigned after the election in 2022. For NDP, I mean, this was the first election under Merit Styles, and she was able to hold on to her position as official opposition. Probably she wanted to be able to get more seats or be able to retain her seats. That did not happen. But also, the election platform was very close between the two. The Liberals and the NDP really focused on issues in Ontario. What you would traditionally see when it comes to healthcare and education and affordability, whereas the PCs under Doug Ford, with the Prime Minister stepping down, really he took the lead as the chair of the premiers, went to DC, was championing, and he really did all the media coverage, and he said, hey, this is about tariffs, and it resonated. I mean, he went a year and a half early. He wanted to definitely go into an election period before the federal election, which is due this year, and it could be due very soon in the coming weeks. We're going to see what's going to happen when the federal Liberals have their leader and Prime Minister before we go into a general election federally. But Doug Ford wanted to go early, and it looks like he bet just right to be able to go snap election in the middle of the winter. And this is before Ontario got to know the other two leaders, Merit Styles and Bonnie Crombie, both new leaders in this election cycle. And it paid off for him, He said he wanted a bigger majority mandate. He didn't get that. It's still a majority, but not bigger than his 83 seats in 2022. But it's still, he's right now at 81 seats that are projected for him. He won, and we're going to see how this goes. It was a very interesting election cycle. And on to the next level, which is going to be federal very soon. And then so it turns out, of course, the PCs lost some seats. So Etobicoke Lakeshore was lost from the PCs. It was won by Liberals. It's Christine Hogarth. She got 40% of the vote, and the Liberal candidate got 48% of the vote. So that was a seat that was lost by the PCs tonight in Etobicoke. And Etobicoke, we know, is the Ford sort of fortress, right? That's where his seat is in Etobicoke North, but that's what we've seen so far. And then, we were still waiting to see where things stand for King Vaughan. The numbers haven't come in yet, so we're going to let you know that. And then, of course, Orleans. Another interesting thing is independent candidate in Haldimand, Norfolk. She was able to keep her seat. She won in 2022, and so we still have one independent MPP in the House again.
Yeah. Robert, I wanted to take your opinion. Where did the Liberals lose the plot? That's the one thing that's still intriguing me, because I thought they would perform better than that. As much as you're saying right, they're still, now they've got an official party status, fine, 13, 15, 14 seats. But my question is, I was expecting at least 20, 25 seats. And Bonnie Crombie, as you were mentioning earlier, I've seen her career when she started volunteering. I still remember she started volunteering for Michael Ignatieff in the leadership campaign. Then Michael Ignatieff lost, Stephen Dion became the leader, but the next thing we know, Bonnie Crombie, she got a ticket for as an MP. She won the seat as an MP, then she lost in 2011, then she became a councillor, then mayor from 2014, and a very strong mayor. 2014 was the first time she won, then 2018 she won again, 2022. She's done very well in Mississauga for almost 2 decades now. So someone who's done very well in Mississauga as an MP, as a mayor, as a regional councillor in Mississauga, here she is not able to win her provincial seat. So I think provincial politics hasn't been lucky for her, right? The federal and municipal, lucky for her.
Lucky for her. And then you have the whole Mayor Patrick Brown factor, he said he's campaigning hard with his mother-in-law, who won the seat tonight, and I'm expecting that she's going to be a cabinet minister because she took out the Liberal leader in her own home turf.
Yeah.
Sylvia Gualteri, new MPP for the PCs. And so, yeah, and anything goes. Elections matter, and there's always a surprise twist.
Yeah, there's always a surprise twist. But I want to take Robert, your opinion as well. Ramonaji thinks she could be the cabinet minister. But overall, I want your analysis on the Liberals. What happened to them? Why couldn't Bonnie at least win her seat? Robert.
Well, so this is kind of the interesting thing, and I think there's kind of two parts to this question, right? I think the first part actually talks a little bit about the NDP here and how the NDP was able to hold all these seats. And when you look at some of the ridings, I'll just use the example of Niagara Centre, the riding I'm currently in right now. I'm coming to you live from. Jeff Birch, the NDP incumbent, he got 42.3% of the vote tonight, winning against his PC Conservative challenger by 5 points. Sounds fair. Sounds like a good result. But in actuality, he only won by 2% in 2022. And you're like, oh, okay, he gained 3%. That sounds reasonable. Why are we talking about it? Well, we're talking about it because provincially, the NDP have lost 5 points. So they have gained 3 points in a seat they hold while losing 5 points provincially. That's very weird. That normally doesn't happen at all. That is very unlikely to happen. So I think what you're very clearly seeing is, at least on the NDP side of this equation, there is a lot of strategic vote power them to keeping these seats. And I'm just using the example of Niagara Centre. I think pretty much any NDP held seat you can find, you're seeing that same pattern repeating over and over and over again in those seats. The flip side of that is actually the Liberals. And why are they not being able to do that, right? If the NDP are able to pull all of this Liberal support, then why is it the fact that the Liberals are not able to do that? Right? I mean, Mississauga East, this is a seat that the Liberals lost by 3 points in 2022. Deepika, who actually eventually ran for mayor of Mississauga, she only lost this seat by about 3% in 2022. She lost it by 41 to 37. So 3-4 points, something like that. Crombie right now, with all the polls reporting, she is losing it by that same 3%, which on the surface sounds whatever. That's not really that big of a deal. But that's being said, they're also gaining 5 points province-wide. So this is the thing where it's like how does any of this make sense? How does it make sense that you're gaining all the support province-wide and yet you're losing support? And to make it even more weird, Mississauga Erin Mills is a tie. That was a seat that was a 5-point win for the PCs. Moving on to Mississauga Lakeshore, a 4-point win for the PCs. They won that by 9. So they gained 5 points in the seat right beside Bonnie Crombie's seat, and they made no gains in her seat at all. And it's the exact same boundaries. There has not been a redistribution in Ontario. It's the exact same boundaries. There will be a redistribution for the federal one, but it's the exact same boundaries. And honestly, it's a question I don't necessarily have an answer to. It's a very difficult question. I can't say definitively why this has happened, other than maybe, and to be fair, when we initially saw Crombie as Liberal leader, she was pretty popular right off the bat, but her favorability did take a bit of a hit. And I think it seems as though maybe she was not as popular personally as some people had thought she would be. Because the thing is, we're actually seeing Liberal candidates in the GTA doing better relative in their riding than she is, right? The Liberals, if you had told me the Liberals were going to win one seat in the GTA tonight, I would have said, oh, okay, Crombie wins her seat. That's not the seat they're going to win. They're potentially going to win Ajax on the other side of the GTA, the other side of the 401. They're not going to win Mississauga East, the leader seat, at the seat where she was the mayor of for many, many years, a very, very strong mayor, never even had a serious challenger as mayor. She's not going to win that seat, but they're going to win a seat on the other side of Toronto. And a bunch of seats between that, but on like a lot of seats along the 401. That's kind of an undertold thing, that the Liberals are actually making tons of gains along the 401 corridor, just not on the opposite sides of it, or in that area. So it's very weird, and there has to be some questions as maybe maybe Crombie wasn't nearly as popular. The idea when she was elected leader was that, oh, she's strong in the GTA. She's going to be able to deliver those Mississauga seats, potentially even in Brampton seats, into York, into Durham, and that just did not happen. She did not have that punch. She was not able to make that dent into it that was promised when she was leader. And I think the Ontario Liberal Party as a whole is going to have some very serious discussion and some very deep soul searching over the next year-ish or so.
And whenever you're ready.
Hi, I'm Bonnie Crom.
Yeah, absolutely. It seems like that's the case. That the Liberals will still have to figure out what went wrong, even though they got, when it comes to the popular vote, they got more than the NDP. They got about 29%, so about 29.9%, 30% of the total voter share, whereas the NDP got 18.5% of the voter share. What's the difference between the voter share versus electoral votes? Well, there's 124 ridings, and that's, you need to be able to, within those ridings, get, more of the vote. And so that's the difference there. So even though you have about that 10% difference between, voter share, where the Liberals got more than the NDP, it's just the NDP's got more seats at 25 seats versus Liberals 14 seats. And the PCs are at 82 seats. So yeah. We're looking into, and then
Make a very important point here that Prime Minister Trudeau, he's sent congrats to Doug Ford, Olivia Chow, they've sent congrats to Doug Ford. That's fine, but he got a mandate now. How would we deal with Prime Minister Trudeau? He's sent congrats to Doug Ford, Olivia Chow, they've sent congrats to Doug Ford. That's fine, but he got a mandate now. How would we deal with tariffs? That's the key question, because this election, the very basis of election from Doug Ford's perspective was tariffs. Here we are at this point, as we are broadcasting this, we haven't heard Trump taking back. Actually, he's doubled down just today. Once again, he's been saying that again and again, that yes, the tariffs are coming on 4th of March. And the industries that are going to be hit, if I look from the Ontario's perspective, we have a massive auto industry here, so that's going to take a hit. Energy sector, more so in Alberta, but then we have a construction industry here, that's going to take a hit. Then trucking industry. What are the implications on agriculture? That's another industry in Ontario that's going to take a hit. Whether, as per Doug Ford, we lose 500,000 jobs, more or less, I don't know, but definitely there are so many challenges coming as far as tariffs are concerned. But now if you won a majority, do you think that will make any difference? Because I think the Conservatives already had a majority, the PCs already had a majority, but they're saying we needed this mandate. So do you think this will make any difference in the fight against tariffs after this election?
Well, it was more of a strategic election cycle because the PCs, Doug Ford wanted to go before the federal election, because usually, for the last year and a half, Pierre Poilievre, the leader of the Conservative Party, has been leading in the polls significantly, and everyone, saw it as a wave, as a Conservative wave to go back into power federally. And so definitely what we've seen in all the different elections is that when Ontario is a specific party, if it's Liberal, then federally you have Conservatives. If it's federally Conservatives, then you have Liberal provincially in Ontario. So, that was a big key thing. He wanted to go before a federal election. And, and also before Ontario got to know the two new leaders, the Liberal leader Bonnie Crombie and Merritt Stiles of the NDP, both new leaders in this election cycle. So, going fast, and he knew that if he waited another year and a half, things could change dramatically, given, if the Conservatives went federally. Now, everything has changed since Donald Trump took office, because then we had, the Prime Minister resign, we had the Deputy Prime Minister, leave resign from her position, and then you have almost like 8 MPs, Liberal MPs, not coming back almost 5 cabinet ministers saying they're not going to run an election. You had the premier of, Newfoundland and Labrador step down, and then you had the premier of Ontario saying, I need an early election. So it changed the landscape of
Premier of Prince Edward Island too.
Yes, and Premier of Prince Edward's Island too. So you have, all of these changes in just a matter of few weeks, since things shifted from, in the White House, and it's affected here. What did Doug Ford promise, Premier Ford now? He promised that he's going to spend. He's going to spend to do bailouts, and we saw him during COVID, seeing him on TV every day, and the spending they did for bailouts, and to be able to support businesses, and that's what he said. He said he's going to be there. He just needs the 4 years to not, to make sure he covers all of Donald Trump's last term in office and what might come. But yeah, it is a federal thing. CUSMA needs to be renegotiated. We're going to go into a federal election very soon, and he pulled this. He triggered this election cycle. Today being February 27th, March 4th, we're looking probably at tariffs. Who knows what's going to happen March 3rd, in the last hour before tariffs take effect? At midnight, things could shift again. Who knows? Like what we saw on February 3rd. Anything could happen, right, with the news cycle. But we see this to be the case. Usually when these massive changes happen, where it shakes the confidence of Ontarians or the country, usually they support incumbent governments, and also when it's snap elections, usually lower voter turnout, it's usually in favor of the incumbent. So it was calculated, to the point. Even so, like the PCs just launched their campaign platform just a few days ago, right? And it wasn't even fully costed. So, it was just everything else was calculated, and it looks like their calculations paid off tonight.
Yeah, the calculations did pay off tonight. Once again, we'd like to tell you the news here at Ymedia Newsroom. PC, they won a third straight majority. Doug Ford has won a third straight majority. That's the news from Ymedia Newsroom, Ymedia Political Sensex. Why don't I come back to you, Robert, once again. I know
residents from TMU Medical School that will start their positions and become doctors. We've got a new hospital, got the LRT, as you said, but it's also important and critical that we get these projects going and we get shovels in the ground. And look, Brampton deserves been left behind. This is our, as a government, our commitment to the city, but also to the province to invest 100 billion over the next 10 years to support infrastructure. And I look forward to continuing to work with, Brampton, especially in municipalities across the province, to deliver on the provisions that we've put forward as a government.
All right, thank you very much. I know it's been a long day for you today, and we'll talk more once you're here at Channel Y Studios. There are lots of issues that would need to be discussed regarding the tariffs as well. But before I let you go, if I could squeeze in that question once again. I know we've spoken about that earlier as well. So that is one question that everyone is asking. What is your government going to do about the tariffs? Because the industries that could get affected, we have auto industry here, we have agriculture here, we have construction, so many other industries. The trucking and transport, you've been the transport minister, you know it better than us. People are looking for answers, and they're looking towards the Ford government, they're looking towards you as the cabinet minister. What assurance you want to give to the community that if the tariffs come in place, here in Ontario, you being the minister, your premier, your government will take good steps so that there is minimal effect of these tariffs on Ontarians?
No, absolutely. This is a very serious challenge for the city, for the Ontario and cities across the province. We will have a strong response. We will do anything and everything it takes to support Canadian businesses, Ontario businesses. Look, in the last 3 years, we've attracted close to $40 billion of new auto investments, whether it's St. Thomas, in Windsor, in Durham, in Alliston, in Brampton. We have to protect these jobs. We're going to do everything we can. We know President Trump is looking at our manufacturing. He wants to take the south of the border. We're not going to let that happen. And for those businesses that are going to be impacted,
Hamilton Centre independent seat, which was, traditionally NDP seat, was taken back by the NDP. And Hamilton Mountain, which was NDP seat, flipped to PC. Mississauga East Cooksville, which was an independent seat where Liberal leader Bonnie Crombie was running, and that was, maintained by the PCs because it was won by the PCs in 2018 and 2022. And you had Nepean, which was a PC seat, flipped to Liberal, and Toronto St. Paul's, which is an NDP seat, flipped to Liberal. So the Liberals, that's how they got to their party status from, just 7 seats to the 14 seats. So there you go. There you have it, how the Liberals were able to get that many seats. You have the NDP at 25, and the numbers are coming in for PCs at 81. Now, we're still waiting, I believe, on King Vaughan to see what the numbers are. I'm going to take a look at that right now and see what's shifted there. It is a PC riding under Stephen Lecce. So yeah, we'll let you know what that looks like as soon as we see some of these numbers here.
Yeah, and Brampton East, I want to talk a little about Brampton East. That is one seat that traditionally has been the backyard of Jagmeet Singh, then Gurratan Singh. We are, once again, it's been a fight between the Conservatives and the Liberals here, because the PC, they won the seat, Brampton East. Hardeep Garewal, once again, he's become the member of provincial parliament from there. But this time it was Vicky Dhillon who came in second from the Liberal Party. We all know this is a seat where we had Jagmeet Singh as an MPP. Later on at that time was Premli Gurmalton, then became an MP from this seat before moving to Burnaby, British Columbia. But then we had Gurratan Singh. He became the MPP from this seat, but he lost earlier this seat and to PC, Hardeep Garewal. But now this time we have Liberal coming back again. Less than 5,000 votes for NDP for Martin Singh. So NDP and the other seat which would have some sort of effect was Brampton North. If NDP or Jagmeet Singh or Gurratan Singh had any effect in Brampton, that was in Brampton East and Brampton North. But Brampton North, total collapse for the NDP. Brampton East as well, Martin Singh did put up a bit of a fight from 3,000, 4,000, but still less than 5,000 votes. So NDP is almost out now here in they didn't stand a chance in Mississauga, but even in Brampton, these two were the only ridings.
Yeah, I just want to tell you the numbers came in for King Vaughan and Stephen Lecce won his seat.
Okay.
It was also Brampton Centre, if you recall, there was Sarah Singh, who also lost her seat in 2022, and to Charmaine Williams, who retained her seat again for a second term. It seems like it's the NDP factor in Brampton has evaporated. Who knows what that's going to look like in future elections, given that, after this PC majority win, which takes them to another, 4 years after serving 7, that's 11 years. We usually see at a 10-year mark, there's usually a wave for another party. So it'll be interesting to see, what the next election cycle is, but that's a long, long time away from now. So I think it's safe to say that Brampton has, maintained its seat count when it comes to the PCs. Hey, listen, it seems like the message that the PCs were running in this election cycle resonated with the people of Ontario. And they, yes, they have 2 seats less than last election, but it's still, a massive majority.
Brampton North, Vicky Dillon still winning, good number of votes. Martin Medeiros, regional councillor, he came to fight for this. He still won a few thousand votes for the Liberals in Brampton Centre. Do you think if Martin Medeiros, Vicky Dillon had been in place earlier, we could have seen a better fight?
Well, I think that was part of the PC strategy, to have the snap election before the Liberals are able to, gain any sort of ground in terms of, donations and momentum. And also this happened during the federal leadership election for the Liberals. And so usually what you see is, the help that the Liberals would have gotten has been busy on the federal side for their own leadership election. So yeah, absolutely. If some of these candidates were in place a lot earlier and my party status. So, to be able to attract some of these but it was consistently, she didn't talk as much.
1,000 votes for the Liberals in Brampton Centre. Do you think if Martin Medeiros, Vicky Dillon had been in place earlier, we could have seen a better fight?
Well, I think that was part of the PC strategy, to have the snap election before the Liberals are able to, gain any sort of ground in terms of, donations and momentum. And also this happened during the federal leadership election for the Liberals. And so usually what you see is, the help that the Liberals would have gotten has been busy on the federal side for their own leadership election. So yeah, absolutely. If some of these candidates were in place a lot earlier and my party status. So, to be able to attract some of these quality the Liberals did in this election cycle, that was a major thing too, because when you're an artist, you really don't know what it's going to happen. You're just hoping, and so snap election, we only saw the platform from the Liberals, earlier than the PCs, but obviously PCs governed, so you knew what to expect there. But the Liberals only launched their election platform like it was advanced polls, and that's when it happened. Same with the NDP, and they really ran on like one issue, which was healthcare. Healthcare is a big issue, of course, in Ontario, but it was consistently, she didn't talk as much about tariffs as we saw the incumbent leader, Doug Ford, talk about tariffs, which seems to have resonated, and this is why we're seeing the numbers tonight.
Yeah, Mississauga Streetville, Mississauga Malton. Close numbers in these two ridings as well. I'm talking about Nina Tangri, and in Mississauga Malton, I'm talking about Deepak Anand. Both of them have won their seats, but still, I would say these were closely fought seats once again. I mean, if Liberals had more time, Javed Haroon, not many people knew him, but still at least his managed to put up some sort of fight in Mississauga Malton against Deepak Anand, and then you have again a bit of a fight against Nina Tangri as well. So if the Liberals had some more time? Do you think more fight in Mississauga? Let's talk about Mississauga. And Bonnie Crombie, we all know she lost her seat, but she had enough time. I wanted to talk more about that, but I want to hear your viewpoint when I have a question for Robert as well.
Yeah, I think it was taken for granted in a way that you think that Bonnie Crombie would have been able to put up a big fight in Mississauga and get her candidates in there. You think that there would be an effect of a mayor, a decade mayor, previous to that councillor, so like 14 years spent in just municipal politics. Prior to that, an MP. So you'd think that she would have a movement in Mississauga, her home turf. But then you have, of course you had the PCs. There were the incumbents there. But what was surprising, it was an open seat where she ran in Mississauga, East Cooksville, and you had I would have to say, was it the Patrick Brown effect in that riding to ensure that Sylvia Gualtieri gets in and beats the Liberal leader? So you can't avoid the Patrick Brown factor in all of this, and we all know from history that he's got a really good grounds game. Like he's somebody who's able to mobilize on the ground and mobilize. Like we've seen him do that in Brampton elections, right? Like we saw him do that in the 2018 municipal election. Quickly he became the mayor, took out the incumbent mayor. Then he was running for federal leadership for the Conservatives, and then as soon as he was out there, again quickly we saw his ground game. So we know that he's a factor in here, and of course we're going to know more in the coming days to weeks of what really happened on the ground, because the numbers obviously speak for themselves.
Yeah, another big surprise for me, if you ask me, and I'll go to Robert, I'll ask him anything that surprised him. Brampton North, Graham McGraw, cabinet minister. He's someone who's quite accessible, been very active in the community, but still a good challenge from the Liberal Party as well. Talk about Brampton North. That was, if you ask me what is one big surprise among other things that I want to mention, this is a surprise for me. Robert, why don't I come to you? We're talking about Brampton North, by the way. Yes, Graham McGraw, he's won his seat, but Ranjit Singh Bagga, I wasn't sure that he'll put up a good fight, but I think he's put up a good fight. But I want to come to you. What stood out for you as the surprise in this election? Yes, Robert.
Oh, it has to be the Ender seats, like 1,000%, right? I mean, when you look at crossings that they've held their seats in, they have lost the seats they don't hold, but yet they've gained vote shares in the seats they do hold. Not even just like, oh, it balances out. It's like they've disproportionately lost vote share in the seats they don't hold to counteract the vote share they gained they do hold. That never happens. I cannot think of a single election in which I've ever seen anything like that. It just speaks to the amount of strategic voting there is, specifically in southwestern Ontario, that corridor from Kitchener, Hamilton, Niagara, Waterloo, London, all the way down through Windsor, that entire corridor. That's whenever you think of strategic voting in Canada, and keep a bookmark for this for a month and a half from now, that's where strategic votes are. That has to be the shocker. The second next one for me has to be the Mississauga losses here. And again, if you had told me the Liberals were going to win one seat in the GTA, I would have said, oh, okay, they won Mississauga East Cooksville. They won Crombie seat, but they didn't. They won Ajax instead, right? And that is shocking to me. I did not expect that. I expected that would have, like, again, when you look at their vote share in the GTA, and they're actually going to have a very competitive vote share in that GTA triangle there from Halton, Peel, York, Durham, they're actually going to be very strong in that corridor, but they're only going to gain one seat. And they're like seats that they were close in Mississauga, right? Mississauga East, they only lost that by 3 points in 2022. They have not made any gains in that seat. They have exactly lost that by 3 points, just like they lost it by in 2022. No gains in that seat, but right next door in Mississauga Lakeshore, a 5-point gain. And next door, on the other way, a massive gain in Etobicoke Lakeshore, almost an 8-point gain there. So very weird swings. And I think maybe Crombie was not nearly as popular in Mississauga as the polls earlier when she was running for leadership had said, and that seems to be the tale of tonight. One more note I'll say about Brampton, and I think this is kind of funny, is that the model had Mississauga seats competitive throughout the entire election, and to be fair, they were. There's many times like they those are still competitive, even in Mississauga East. That's a 3-point win. 4-point in Lakeshore. Aaron Mills is basically a tie. It's a 20 vote gap with all the polls reporting. That one's going to overtime. All the Mississaugas are competitive. The model kind of drew a line and said none of the Bramptons are going to be competitive. And I mean, they're peripherally competitive, right? You're looking at 15, 20-point gaps in some of these ridings. But it's funny how there is just that line drawn in the model about that. And us as commentators, right, we know why there's that line there. There's a very clear line between Brampton and Mississauga. There's always been a lot of issues between Brampton and Mississauga. Mississauga wanting to split from Peel region so they can reduce their taxes. That's something that's something that's happened in the real world, but the model never sees that. But the model always knew that there was a line there in Brampton, between Brampton and Mississauga, and that line is very clear tonight. Federally, we expect that when we look at the federal election, the Liberals are going to be basically competitive equally throughout Brampton and Mississauga. But at least tonight, provincially, there's a very clear line between Brampton and Mississauga. And you're going to be able to see exactly where the PC support is stronger. And that line is not coincidentally the Brampton Mississauga border. So and again, as you mentioned, right, it speaks to the losses, right? The NDP Brampton East, right? That was Jagmeet Singh seat not a long time ago, and even in 2018 that was an NDP seat, and they barely lost it in 2022, and now they're at 10% in that seat. It just shows you how far the NDP has crumbled, but yet somehow, despite losing all that support across the province, they're actually gaining vote share on the seats they hold. It just shows you the
in Haldimand Northfold. But yeah, you're right. In Hamilton Centre, it didn't, and perhaps it's the grassroots in Hamilton didn't maybe go with what her views were on the issue.
But a strong base for NDP, probably that could be the reason too.
Yeah, absolutely, and then they just didn't agree with her because the NDPs took that seat back tonight.
Yeah, so it was their seat already, but just because independent,
Exactly.
Hamilton Centre was their seat anyways. Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about if we could change the headline right now for a minute, since I have two very good with me. So why don't we talk about the fiddle politics for a couple of, and then we'll come back to, and then we'll call it a day. So if we could headlines there, and I want to talk about the federal policy because the numbers are getting closer. I know the Ipsos survey that I was looking at, an Ipsos survey 2-point lead. In Ipsos survey, 2-point lead, 38% for the Liberals. That was the lead for Liberals was in 2021. After good almost 4 years, the Liberals were seen in lead as far as the Ipsos survey is concerned. 38 for Liberals, 36 for the Conservatives. Well, are we seeing the fight picking up as we approach 9th March when the Liberals are going to pick up. The new leader is Mark Carney. Is Mark Carney coming up as a threat for the Conservatives? Is he going to spoil their party? Is he going to spoil the apple cart? What's going to happen there? That is the race going to become interesting again as far as the Fed elections are concerned. So Ymedia political sensex, I'm just trying to shift it to Liberal leadership race. I'm just trying to shift it to Conservatives versus Liberals 2025, because we're definitely going to see a showdown. Doesn't matter whether the showdown between the Conservatives and the Liberals for the government, because NDP seems to be collapsing. I doubt they're going to come back. Bloc, I don't think so much of resonance for them as well. So I think the showdown is going to be between Conservative versus Liberals. So that's our Ymedia political sensex. The topic for Ymedia political sensex right now: Conservatives versus Liberal, federal elections 2025. The showdown is about to begin no matter what. I think the deadline is October, so we could see an early election too. Robert, I want to start with you this time. What do you make of it? You've been polling all these numbers, watching all the poll numbers very closely. Is Mark Carney becoming a threat again? Is it getting close between the federal Conservatives and the federal Liberals?
Yeah, lot of things to say on this topic here. So one, I'll start off with the federal Liberal leadership race. So yeah, as you mentioned, we are only days away from that right now. That is March 8th. We have actually been polling that and releasing that for our subscribers as well on Twitter and on our website. We have Mark Carney leading. It's questionable whether or not it's going to be a first ballot win, or I think rather a third ballot win, because Frank Bayless is there, and his votes, if you just transfer them fully to Mark Carney, obviously doesn't work that way, but it's not enough for Mark Carney to be able to win on the second ballot. It would need to be a third ballot. But again, when you look at second choice votes, Mark Carney is the overwhelming favorite there among second choice votes. So he will eventually be able to get that. It seems unlikely that anybody's going to be able to seriously challenge him. That one's going to be a war of attrition. It'll eventually be Mark Carney. Now we talk about what happens after that. So as you mentioned, the polls have been rapidly getting better for the Liberals. Basically, since Trudeau resigned, they took a little bit of a dip right after Trudeau resigned, and just kind of like exponentially skyrocketing up. Some of the fastest movement in polling I've ever seen in my entire life, honestly. People had asked me kind of before what they thought would happen once Trudeau resigned. I kind of thought, you know what, maybe it'll be a 10-point Conservative lead once the dust settles. That was wrong. We're basically close to a tie now. And especially with Mark Carney on the ballot, it's actually a lot closer. One thing I will say about that, though, is that when you look at those numbers, probably even more interesting than the tied number is the fact of where they are tied, right? You're looking at something along the lines of, and our most recent one had 39-36, a 3-point Conservative lead, but when Mark Carney was on the ballot, it was like, I think 41-42, 41-40 or 42-41, something like that. I don't remember off the top of my head. Don't worry though, we're going to be definitely polling this a lot more. We've been focusing our attention here in Ontario for obvious reasons, but we're going to be focusing on that. As a matter of fact, I think we're going to be launching a survey in just a few days for Ontario. We're likely to publish a federal ballot intention before the leadership race is done, I believe. So, but no, the interesting thing is that number, right? If people remember back to the federal election just 4 years ago, the vote was 33. It was basically a 1-point Conservative win. They got 33% of the vote to the Liberals 32% of the vote. We are now way higher than that. Both parties are way higher than their vote share from 2021. And that's significant because that also correlates with the absolute death of the NDP federally. They are at 10%, and that's not just our poll. Many pollsters have them at barely double digits at this point. And the thing is, this is where many people in Canada and many political analysts across the world will say that eventually all political systems kind of gravitate to a two-party system, kind of like the US, where there's one dominant party and then one party that rises up to challenge it, and then everybody picks between those two parties. And they say that that system applies to every country except for Canada. And I'm wondering if maybe now we're kind of starting to buck that trend here, where maybe now we're heading up to that just two-party system now, because those numbers look very, very similar to kind of a UK number where you have Labour and the Conservatives, and then you have the Lib Dems way down there at about 10 points, right? The interesting thing about that is the fact
Robert,
that
sorry to-
the ND. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt. We will come back. This is a very interesting topic that we're discussing right now. But we have Hardeep Garewal, who's once again one from Brampton East. Hardeep Garewal ji, a very warm welcome on Ymedia. How are you?
I'm doing great, Ymedia ji. Thank you so much for having me on the air.
You're very welcome. Congrats once again. You won this. This was a riding we were all watching very closely. There was a time when this was the backyard for Jagmeet Singh and then Gurratan Singh. But here you are. You defeated Gurratan Singh last time. This time again, you've defeated two strong candidates. So tell us, when you were door knocking, what were you listening from? The constituents, why do you think people supported you once again? This is a very tough riding. You've successfully defeated the Liberal and the NDP candidate once again.
Thank you very much, Ymedia ji. I think two factors have a play at this. One is our amazing team. I'm so thankful to all of our volunteers, the door knockers. Doesn't matter if it was a snowstorm, they were out there knocking every day. Our callers, our team captains, they're the ones that deserve this victory, because it's not my victory, it's our team's victory. So when we talk about taking over Brampton and bringing it back into the PCs, going from 2 seats to all 5, it's about delivering for Bramptonians and making sure we resonate with what their needs are. Premier Ford has invested more in Brampton than in the past. Hospital, the medical school, long-term care homes, the underground LRT, everything has a factor to play, because when Bramptonians think about who's going to put us first, they know it's Premier Ford and our Ontario PC team, and that's what makes the key difference of keeping Brampton and also being consistent and making sure that we're there for Bramptonians. The NDP has a habit of disappearing after a while. We're not going to disappear. We're going to work hard. We're going to make sure that we continue to deliver these key infrastructure projects.
Yeah, we also saw Premier Ford coming to your riding. He was working very hard. I want to know it, one of the things that I witnessed this time, Premier Ford was really focusing on Brampton. I clearly remember he was here at iChannel Y Studios when I kind of asked him, I said, you're in majority all over the province, but you're in minority in Brampton. There was 3-2 in Brampton. And he said, next time we're going to win 5 ridings. But this time, in cold, in snow, he was there with you, canvassing in your riding, Brampton East. Do you think Premier Ford was specially focused on Brampton? He's going to do something more for Brampton with hospital, with LRT and all those things?
Absolutely, he's specially focused on Brampton. When you take a look at his history, he grew up on Lisa Street. He's a proud Bramptonian himself, and then after that, moving back to Etobicoke. So we're thankful for Premier Ford's investments. It's about what the people and the mandate the people gave us. When they elected all 5 of us, we were able to convince the Premier and make sure as a team that we bring these investments into Brampton. And he's more excited than we are in announcing all of these things. He was very excited in announcing the LRT, the underground mini subway, as we call it, for Bramptonians. Because if you thought about this even 6 months ago, 2 years ago, you would have said it's impossible. It's Premier Ford that's delivering that and unlocking the potential of our downtown core. So it's huge for Brampton, and that's what our guarantee is. That's our promise. Unlike the Liberals and the NDP, we're going to stand up for Bramptonians and make sure we get the infrastructure we deserve. We're now the 3rd largest city in Ontario, and we're only about to grow, so we need more infrastructure. And I guarantee you, over the next few years, it's going to be Premier Ford that announces the 3rd hospital for Brampton as well.
I want your comment on the tariffs as well. Your Premier Ford announced that we are having these elections because we want a strong mandate because of the tariffs President Trump is announcing. So now you have that mandate. You are in a riding which could face challenges if the Trumps actually come into play because of the auto industry, because of the transportation industry. We have some people with the agriculture industry as well. So all these industries could take a hit. Your Premier is already saying we could lose 500,000 jobs, we could enter into recession as well. So what would you and your government do to support Ontarians in case the tariffs come into effect?
Absolutely. We ran on the platform of protecting Ontario and protecting Ontario jobs, manufacturers, and industries. And you've seen that from Premier Ford in the past as well. When the Stellantis plant was slowing down, auto manufacturing was slowing down, Premier Ford and our entire team stepped up to make sure that these manufacturing plants stay in Brampton. And not only did we keep our existing jobs, we brought in new jobs. And we take it to look at the new EV battery plant by Magna and all the other investments that came following that, including the trickle-down jobs. We're going to make sure that we continue to protect Ontario's economy and continue to ensure that Brampton grows. And that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to challenge the tariffs that are going to be coming up and making sure that we support the industries that are here in our great city that are giving people such powerful paychecks.
Last question on the transportation sector. I know Minister Sarkaria has been a transport minister, but then you never know, you could get a minister portfolio but an important thing on the transportation sector. Two questions on this one. One, you've lost your car yourself that was stolen. You know it better than anyone else. You know how traumatized you are when you lose your car. And these days, the violent car checkings, we're seeing home invasions. So why don't you talk a minute on the crime and also a touch upon auto insurance, because this has been the discussion forever, especially in your riding, please.
Absolutely. So even when we talk about auto insurance, we're looking at why are these rates rising? Why is auto insurance getting so expensive? Not only for Bramptonians, but for people in Mississauga and Vaughan as well. And these carjackings and these breaking and enters have a direct correlation to all of that. When we take a look at all the claims that the insurance companies are paying out, and our government's working hard to make sure the police officers have the resources they need to ensure that they're able to protect Ontarians. But the major key here is we need the federal government to cooperate. We need these slap on the wrist laws to change. We need minimum sentencing to come into play to ensure that we keep these people behind bars, because it's absolutely not acceptable that people are out on bail once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, 6 times. It doesn't end. And that's not something you see here in Ontario. You see that across the country, whether you take a look at Vancouver, Alberta, Quebec. We need these laws to change, and it's our promise and it's our guarantee. We'll be the ones to keep them in jail. Just give us the stronger laws.
All right, thank you very much. I'll let you go, but I see our colleague Jagdish Garewal ji also standing with you. So before I let you guys go, last word, let's hear it last word from him as well. So we'd like to ask him just maybe one question. Jagdish Garewal ji, Sat Sri Akal, Ymedia te ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਸਵਾਗਤ ਹੈ।
ਥੈਂਕ ਯੂ ਸੋ ਮਚ ਜਗਦੀਸ਼ ਜੀ, ਧੰਨਵਾਦ। ਸਤਿ ਸ਼੍ਰੀ ਅਕਾਲ ਜੀ।
ਸਤਿ ਸ਼੍ਰੀ ਅਕਾਲ ਜੀ। ਜਗਦੀਸ਼ ਜੀ, ਮੇਰੇ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਇੱਕ ਦੋ ਸਵਾਲ ਹੋਣਗੇ। ਪਹਿਲਾ ਸਵਾਲ ਤਾਂ ਇਹੀ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਕੀ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਇੱਕ ਵਾਰ ਫੇਰ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੇ ਪੀਸੀ ਪਾਰਟੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਦੁਬਾਰਾ ਤੋਂ ਆਪਣਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਮੈਂਡੇਟ ਦਿਖਾਇਆ, ਵਿਸ਼ਵਾਸ ਦਿਖਾਇਆ ਪੀਸੀ ਪਾਰਟੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ, ਕੀ ਕਾਰਨ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਇਹਦਾ?
Just tell him to come inside then. I'm on TV. Go in the front hall.
ਜੀ ਜੀ, ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਆਵਾਜ਼ ਆ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ ਜੀ? ਹਾਂਜੀ, ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਆਵਾਜ਼ ਆ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ ਜੀ?
ਹਾਂਜੀ ਹਾਂਜੀ, ਗੋ ਐਟ ਪਲੀਜ਼। ਸੋ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਇਹ ਕਲੀਅਰ ਕਰ ਦਿਓ ਕਿ ਐਜ਼ ਏ ਜਰਨਲਿਸਟ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਗੱਲ ਦਾ ਜਵਾਬ ਦੇਵਾਂ ਜਾਂ ਐਜ਼ ਏ ਐਮਪੀ ਦੇ ਤੌਰ ਤੇ ਜਵਾਬ ਦੇਵਾਂ?
ਨਹੀਂ, ਮੈਨੂੰ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਜਵਾਬ ਐਜ਼ ਅ ਜਰਨਲਿਸਟ ਚਾਹੀਦਾ ਜੀ। ਯੂ ਆਰ ਅ ਜਰਨਲਿਸਟ ਫਸਟ, ਆਈ ਗੈਸ।
ਥੈਂਕ ਯੂ ਜਗਦੀਸ਼। ਸੋ ਜੋ ਆਪਾਂ ਦੇਖ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ ਇਸ ਬ੍ਰੈਂਪਟਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ, ਜੋ ਇੱਕ ਵਾਰ ਫੇਰ ਤੋਂ ਪੀਸੀ ਪਾਰਟੀ ਨੂੰ ਇਹ ਵੱਡੀ ਜਿੱਤ ਦਿੱਤੀ ਹੈ ਬ੍ਰੈਂਪਟਨ ਦੇ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੇ, ਉਹ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਯੂਨਿਟੀ ਹੈ, ਪੰਜੇ ਦੇ ਪੰਜੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ MPP ਨੇ, ਜਿਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਹਰਦੀਪ ਗਰੇਵਾਲ, ਅਮਰਜੋਤ ਸੰਧੂ ਤੇ ਪ੍ਰਭਮੀਤ ਸਰਕਾਰੀਆ, ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਯੂਨਿਟੀ ਨਾਲ ਗ੍ਰੈਮ ਮੈਕਗ੍ਰੈਗਰ ਤੇ ਸ਼ਰਮੀਨ ਵਿਲੀਅਮ ਦੀ, ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਦੀ ਪੰਜਾਂ ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਯੂਨਿਟੀ ਹੈ, ਉਸ ਯੂਨਿਟੀ ਨੂੰ ਦੇਖਦੇ ਹੋਏ ਆ। ਪਲੱਸ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਜੋ ਬ੍ਰੈਂਪਟਨ ਦੇ ਲਈ ਕੰਮ ਕੀਤਾ ਇਕੱਠੇ ਹੋ ਕੇ, ਔਰ ਉਹ ਇੱਕ ਸ਼ਾਨਦਾਰ ਕੰਮ ਕੀਤਾ। ਇੱਕ ਅਸੀਂ ਅੱਜ ਤੋਂ ਜੇ ਕੋਈ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ 10 ਤੋਂ 15 ਸਾਲ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਦੀ ਗੱਲ, ਅਸੀਂ ਆਲਵੇਜ਼ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਦੇ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਬਰੈਂਪਟਨ ਨੂੰ ਫੇਅਰ ਸ਼ੇਅਰ ਨਹੀਂ ਮਿਲ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈਗਾ। ਸੋ ਉਸ ਫੇਅਰ ਸ਼ੇਅਰ ਨੂੰ ਬਰਾਬਰ ਕਰਨ ਦੇ ਲਈ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਸਾਰੇ ਬਹੁਤ ਕੰਮ ਕੀਤਾ ਗਿਆ। ਉਸ ਦਾ ਨਤੀਜਾ ਸਾਹਮਣੇ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਜੋ ਕੰਮ ਪਿਛਲੇ ਦਿਨੀ ਬਰੈਂਪਟਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੋਏ ਨੇ, ਉਸ ਕਾਰਨ ਇਹ ਸਾਰੀ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਇਹ ਮੈਂਡੇਟ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਗਿਆ ਦੁਬਾਰਾ ਫਿਰ, ਔਰ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਐਪਰੀਸ਼ੀਏਟ ਕੀਤਾ ਗਿਆ। ਸਪੈਸ਼ਲੀ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਬਿਗ ਪ੍ਰੋਜੈਕਟ ਨੇ ਲਾਈਕ ਹਾਈਵੇ 413, ਉਸ ਦੇ ਲਈ ਬਰੈਂਪਟਨ ਦੇ ਲੋਕੀ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਨੇ ਕਾਫੀ ਐਪਰੀਸ਼ੀਏਟ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ। ਉਹ ਤੋਂ ਇਲਾਵਾ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਯੂਨੀਵਰਸਿਟੀ ਮੈਡੀਕਲ ਸਕੂਲ ਲਿਆਂਦਾ ਗਿਆ ਉਸ ਨੂੰ ਐਪਰੀਸ਼ੀਏਟ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ, LRT ਲਿਆਂਦੀ ਗਈ ਉਸ ਨੂੰ ਐਪਰੀਸ਼ੀਏਟ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ। ਫਿਊਚਰ 'ਚ ਜੋ PRT ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਕੀਤੀ ਜਾ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ ਕੁਈਨ ਸਟਰੀਟ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ, ਉਸ ਨੂੰ ਐਪਰੀਸ਼ੀਏਟ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਆ। ਬਸ ਜੁਦਵੀਰ ਇੱਕ ਯੂਨੀਵਰਸਿਟੀ ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਹੈ, ਵੈਸੇ ਅਲਗੋਮਾ ਯੂਨੀਵਰਸਿਟੀ ਕਾਫੀ ਡਿਵੈਲਪ ਕਰ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ ਬਰੈਂਪਟਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ, ਔਰ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਗੋ ਟ੍ਰੇਨ ਨੂੰ ਕਨੈਕਟ ਕਰ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਹੈ ਸਾਰੀਆਂ ਯੂਨੀਵਰਸਿਟੀ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ, ਤੇ ਔਰ ਬੱਚਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਇਸ ਵੇਲੇ ਪੇਰੈਂਟਸ ਨੂੰ ਬੱਚੇ ਛੱਡਣ ਦੇ ਲਈ ਜਾਣਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਪੈਂਦਾ ਹੈਗਾ, ਵਾਟਰ ਨੂੰ ਜਾਣਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਪੈਂਦਾ ਲੰਡਨ, ਸਿਰਫ ਇੱਥੋਂ ਗੋ ਟ੍ਰੇਨ ਤੱਕ ਛੱਡ ਕੇ ਤੇ ਉਹ ਅੱਧੇ ਪੌਣੇ ਘੰਟੇ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਆਪਣੀ ਯੂਨੀਵਰਸਿਟੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਪਹੁੰਚ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਨੇ। ਉਹ ਵੀ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਵੱਡੀ ਗੱਲ ਕੀਤੀ ਗਈ ਹੈ। ਇਹ ਸਾਰੇ ਕਾਸੇ ਦੀਆਂ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਕੀਤੀਆਂ ਨੇ ਪੇਰੈਂਟਸ ਨੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਕਿ ਸਾਡੇ ਲਈ ਬਹੁਤ ਸੌਖਾ ਹੋ ਗਿਆ। ਸੋ ਇਹ ਸਾਰਾ ਕੁਝ ਦੇਖਦੇ ਹੋਇਆ ਇੱਕ ਵਾਰ ਫਿਰ ਤੋਂ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਬਰੈਂਪਟਨ ਦੇ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੇ PC ਪਾਰਟੀ ਨੂੰ ਆਪਣਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਮੈਂਡੇਟ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਹੈ, ਤੇ ਲੈਟਸ ਸੀ ਜਿਹੜੇ 4 ਸਾਲ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਜੋ ਵਾਅਦੇ ਕੀਤੇ ਥੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਪੂਰਾ ਕਰ ਸਕਣ। ਹਸਪੀਟਲ ਸੈਕਿੰਡ ਬਣਨਾ ਹੈ, ਮਾਰਚ 28 ਨੂੰ ਜਿਸ ਦੀ ਕੰਸਟਰਕਸ਼ਨ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਹੋਣੀ ਹੈ ਉਸ ਨੂੰ ਪ੍ਰੋਪਰਲੀ ਇਹ ਬਣਾ ਸਕਣ, ਤੇ ਇਸ ਤੋਂ ਇਲਾਵਾ ਹਾਈਵੇ 413 ਦੀ ਸਮਰ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕੰਸਟਰਕਸ਼ਨ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਕਰ ਸਕਣ। ਇਹ ਸਾਰੇ ਕਾਸੇ ਤੇ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਦੀ ਨਜ਼ਰ ਬਣੀ ਰਹੇਗੀ ਕਿ PC ਪਾਰਟੀ ਨੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਇਹ ਕੰਮ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਕੀਤੇ ਨੇ ਕਿ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਕੰਪਲੀਟ ਕਰਦੀ ਹੈ ਇਸ ਟਰਮ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ। ਜੇ ਕੰਪਲੀਟ ਕਰਦੀ ਹੈ ਦੈਨ ਆਈ ਬਲੀਵ ਕਿ ਬਰੈਂਪਟਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ PC ਪਾਰਟੀ ਇੱਕ ਨੈਸ਼ਨਲ ਪਾਰਟੀ ਬਣ ਜਾਏਗੀ।
ਠੀਕ ਹੈ ਜੀ, ਥੈਂਕ ਯੂ ਸੋ ਮਚ, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਆਪਣੇ ਵਿਚਾਰ ਦਿੱਤੇ, ਔਰ ਅਸੀਂ ਰਿਕੁਐਸਟ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ ਕਿ ਆਉਣ ਵਾਲੇ ਸਮੇਂ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਇੱਥੇ ਸਟੂਡੀਓ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਬੈਠ ਕੇ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕੀਤੀ ਜਾਏਗੀ। ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਬਹੁਤ ਬਹੁਤ ਮੁਬਾਰਕਬਾਦ। ਆਈ ਐਮ ਸ਼ੋਰ ਕਿ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਵੀ ਬੜੀ ਮਿਹਨਤ ਕੀਤੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ। ਸੋ ਹਰਦੀਪ ਗਰੇਵਾਲ ਹੋਣਾ ਦੀ ਜਿੱਤ ਦੀ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਬਹੁਤ ਬਹੁਤ ਮੁਬਾਰਕਬਾਦ। ਥੈਂਕ ਯੂ ਸੋ ਮਚ ਸਰ।
ਥੈਂਕ ਯੂ ਜਸਵੀਰ, ਬਟ ਇੱਕ ਕੈਂਪ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਮੈਂ ਜ਼ਰੂਰ ਕਹਿਣਾ ਚਾਹਾਂਗਾ ਕਿ ਮੈਂ ਸਭ ਤੋਂ ਵੱਧ ਧੰਨਵਾਦ ਕਰਦਾ ਬਰੈਂਪਟਨ ਈਸਟ ਦੇ ਸਾਰੇ ਹੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਵੋਟਰਸ ਦਾ ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਨੇ ਸਾਡਾ ਸਹਿਯੋਗ ਦਿੱਤਾ, ਅਤੇ ਨਾਲ ਦੀ ਨਾਲ ਜੋ ਸਾਡਾ ਪੂਰਾ ਪਰਿਵਾਰ ਇਸ ਕੈਂਪੇਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਲੱਗਿਆ ਹੋਇਆ ਸੀ। ਛੋਟਾ ਬੇਟਾ ਚੇਤਨ ਗਰੇਵਾਲ ਉਹ ਕੈਂਪੇਨ ਦਾ ਮੈਨੇਜਰ ਸੀਗਾ, ਬੇਟੀ ਹੈ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਉਹ ਸਾਰੇ ਡੋਰ ਨੌਕਰਸ ਹੈਂਡਲ ਕਰ ਰਹੀ ਸੀ, ਤੇ ਨਾਲ ਦੀ ਨਾਲ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਵਾਈਫ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਸਾਰਾ ਕਾਲ ਸੈਂਟਰ ਹੈਂਡਲ ਕਰ ਰਹੀ ਸੀ। ਮੇਰੇ ਜ਼ਿੰਮੇ ਲੱਗੀ ਸੀਗੀ ਸਾਰਾ ਟੋਟਲ PR। ਸੋ ਇਟ ਵਾਜ਼ ਫੈਮਿਲੀ ਦਾ ਇੱਕ ਪੂਰਾ ਕੈਂਪੇਨ ਸੀਗਾ, ਤੇ ਨਾਲ ਦੀ ਨਾਲ ਮੇਰੇ ਫਾਦਰ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਹਰਦੀਪ ਤੇ ਗ੍ਰੈਂਡਮਦਰ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਕੰਮ ਸੀਗਾ ਕਿ ਬੈਠ ਕੇ ਅਰਦਾਸਾਂ ਕਰਨੀਆਂ, ਸੋ ਆਪਣੀਆਂ ਅਰਦਾਸਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਾਮਯਾਬ ਹੋਏ ਨੇ। ਸੋ ਸਾਰੀ ਇੱਕ ਫੈਮਿਲੀ ਦਾ ਸਾਡਾ ਪ੍ਰੋਜੈਕਟ ਸੀਗਾ, ਤੇ ਨਾਲ ਦੀ ਨਾਲ ਬਰੈਂਪਟਨ ਈਸਟ ਦੇ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੇ ਔਰ ਸਾਰੇ ਵਲੰਟੀਅਰਸ ਨੇ ਆਪਣਾ ਪੂਰਾ ਸਾਡਾ ਸਹਿਯੋਗ ਦਿੱਤਾ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਵੀ ਅਸੀਂ ਦੇਣ ਨਹੀਂ ਦੇ ਸਕਾਂਗੇ। ਅਸੀਂ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਦਾ ਤਹਿ ਦਿਲ ਤੋਂ ਧੰਨਵਾਦ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਤੇ ਸ਼ੁਕਰੀਆ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਪਰਮਾਤਮਾ ਦਾ ਕਿ ਸ਼ੁਕਰ ਦਾਤਿਆ ਸ਼ੁਕਰ।
All right, thank you so much sir, and we wish you best, all the best.
Thank you.
Thank you sir. Thank you. Thank you. Once again, welcome to Ymedia Newsroom, Ymedia Political Sensex. The big news from Ymedia Political Sensex, Ymedia Newsroom is Ontario PC party has once again won a strong majority. This is the third time that PC party has won a strong majority. Yes, the Liberals did put up a fight, but they got an official party status, but still in the third position. NDP, once again, official party status for them. But Merit Stiles won her seat, but Bonnie Crombie, she lost her seat. We'll talk more about this. We have two very special guests here. Ymedia Political Sensex. Once again, I think I did have to interrupt Robert. Robert, you were talking about, we'll go back to the federal thing once again and then we'll call it a day. But I think we're talking about the federal politics, conservatives and liberal race.
Yeah. So before Trudeau resigned and the Liberals gained massively in the polls, you actually had the NDP and Liberals about tied. They were both at kind of low 20s, 21, 22, something like that. And I think if you were to take those numbers, like the polling numbers right before Trudeau resigned, and you were to kind of compare them to the 2021 federal election, what you could make a very quick calculation of is, oh, okay, the Liberals are down like 13 points and the Conservatives are up 13 points. So it's just a transfer of 13 points from the Liberals to the Conservatives, and the NDP have maybe gained a little bit from Liberals, but mostly stayed about the same. And I think that was a pretty much back of the envelope calculation most people made, except that I don't think that happened. What I actually think happened is you had a mass transfer from the NDP to the federal Conservatives. I think actually about 10 points from the NDP went to the federal Conservative, and you can actually see this in the demographics. But replacing those voters as they were leaving from the NDP federally to the Conservatives, they were being replaced with disaffected Liberal voters who were saying, I can't vote for Trudeau again, so I'm going to vote NDP. And now that Trudeau is gone, now you're like, oh, okay, I can vote Liberal again. So now the 10% has shifted back to the Liberals, and now the tide has come out. And now you see the damage that potentially the federal NDP have had in the last few years with Jagmeet Singh backing up Trudeau these entire 4 years. So the federal politics is very fascinating right now. Obviously, we're going to be doing a lot more polling on this, but it's a fascinating tale, and I'm not sure how this election is going to end. One more thing I will say about it, though, is the fact that, and I think a lot of people are kind of overlooking this, with the U.S. Obviously, some parallels to the U.S. Presidential election at this point, right? Joe Biden was in trouble for a large part of the election. He was never having a clear win. And then all of a sudden, he had a very poor debate for several reasons. And then he eventually had to step aside as a candidate and have Harris, his running mate, take over for that. And I think what a lot of people forget is that when Harris took over for Biden, she jumped out to a pretty big lead too. She was up to a 4 or 5 point lead right after she entered in the race. And I think we might be seeing the exact same thing happening in Canada right now, where all of a sudden people are like, we can't have Justin Trudeau as prime minister again. We can't have him. We can't have him. We're going to try out this Poilievre guy. And now it's like, oh, well, Trudeau's gone now. Mission accomplished. We can now vote Liberal. But Mark Carney is an unknown. Watching the federal Liberal debates, his debating style is okay. He's a central banker. Watching him debate reminds me very much of watching Tiff Macklem when he does the federal interest rate announcements. It's very, very similar kind of style to that. It's not a kind of combative, debative style, whereas Pierre Poilievre is just a pure attacker. He will absolutely interrogate you like a lawyer interrogating someone on a stand. That is going to create a very stark contrast in just a bit over a week should Carney win the leadership. So, again, we're seeing the Liberals making a huge gain right now. Actually, to be fair, I think depending on some things, the Liberals, if the election were held today with Mark Carney as leader, even though he's not actually leader, I think the Liberals could actually potentially win a majority on the current vote shares, but that's not happening. There's still a lot more election to happen, and I carefully remind people that Harris also had a lead when she replaced Biden as well. I think that's a very important point to think about in all this.
At this point, I want to ask Ramonaji, what's your opinion? I know you're following the federal leadership race for the Liberals as well, but I know if you were to ask me what is the headline at Ymedia Political Sensex, you know, I'm a print guy first, then news. Then
minister, and then we've just seen a roller coaster. It launched a leadership election, and then it shifted the conservative, high poll numbers for a better half of a year and a half. We've seen that. It launched Ontario into an election. A lot of things changed. Now, what do we see in these past few weeks? I think we've seen the Liberals very active in Washington, D.C. when it comes to the Foreign Affairs Minister, from the Finance Minister, all the ministers making sure that that they're able. We have now a fentanyl czar. Everything has shifted so much. But what happens is Canadians became patriotic. When President Trump talks about Canada becoming the 51st state, guess what happened? We saw it happen in the hockey game with US-Canada. We saw the fighting break out. We saw unity for Canadians. And usually in this sort of circumstances, the country usually forms and goes behind their leaders, right? In this case, we saw it in Ontario, go behind the incumbent. Here, in this case, PC leader Doug Ford, now Premier Ford. And then we saw that happen with the Liberals, where the membership raised 400,000 members that are able to vote. Voting is right now until March 9th, where the new leader is going to be elected and then become Prime Minister. This is the Liberal leadership. But we also saw the Conservative talking points change, because with these new Liberal candidates, they're talking about axing the carbon tax. They're talking about some of these things that have been popular with the electorate for these many months. And then we saw the shift with Pierre Poilievre, the Conservative leader, in terms of him having to change a strategy, because no longer is he going to run an election against Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, and because he's not going to be there in about 10 days or so. And axe the carbon tax isn't going to be a thing, because it looks like the front two runners, Chrystia Freeland and Mark Carney, are saying there isn't going to be a carbon tax, consumer carbon tax. Carney saying it's going to be on polluters like industries. So what does this mean? It looks like the Liberal membership has fallen in love with the CV of Mark Carney, because nobody really knew him. He's not a politician. And to Robert's point, the debate, he did not perform very well, because he said he's not a politician. He wasn't quick on his zingers. He wasn't able to talk about things that make sense to the voter to understand in layman's terms, in articulate fashion. What does it mean for affordability? What does it mean for the economy? So he's got a lot to do, because if he does become the Liberal leader, which looks like he will be, he's going to start debating when election kicks off, federal election, against Jagmeet Singh, against Pierre Poilievre, and against Yves Blanchette. So it's a big deal for him to catch up. So that's going to be a very interesting race to go anyway. And this is after 10 years of Liberal rule, where you think there's going to be a swing, and we really expected the swing for the Conservatives. It could still happen, but that's also part of the reason why a lot of the Liberal incumbents are saying they're not going to run for re-election. Although I did hear that Ymedia Anand, the Transport Minister, who announced she's not going to run for re-election, turns out tomorrow she's going to make an announcement to say she is going to run. A few of the MPs are saying if Mark Carney wins, they're going to run again. They're seeing the poll numbers, and maybe they're a lot more hopeful about what that looks like. So let's see.
Or maybe it's Mark Carney who must have discussed with Ymedia Anand that, and she knows she would get a plum position in case Mark Carney or they form the government. And you're right. I mean, that was one of the reasons. Do you think Omal Al-Gabra or anybody else also coming back from retirement? Harjeet Sajjan has already announced he's not going to run. You see more faces coming back now?
Well, let's see what happens. I think March 9th, it's going to indicate what that looks like. Now, if whoever wins that leadership and becomes the Prime Minister, well, let's see if they're going to try to do a throne speech, and then that could trigger a non-confidence vote and we go into an election. Or they don't even decide to do a throne speech and they say, we're going to go into an election because, we got to deal with Trump head on. We got to renegotiate CUSMA. We need a 4-year mandate. We can't, dilly-dally for a few months until, what it looks like. So, I think Canada's going to be an election, right away. So this is all to be expected. And so far, when it comes to candidate selections, the Conservatives are leading in terms of having as many candidates. It's over 200 seats that they have candidates in place. Then it's the Liberals and then the NDP. The NDP is what the biggest question is here. What does it mean for Jagmeet Singh? What does it mean for the NDP vote? We've seen them trickle down with less seats in each election cycle, the last 3 elections. So that's going to be interesting to see how ready they are, even though they sent out an internal memo saying be ready to go into election as early as March 10th, which is significant because it's the day after the Liberals have their leader who's going to go into election, the Prime Minister.
Yeah, this is very, very interesting time. As much as we have Donald Trump, at Ymedia breaking news, it's almost every second there's a headline for Ymedia breaking news with Donald Trump right across the globe, but he's changing things here in Canada as well. 1 minute you hear someone saying, okay, I may not run as a candidate once again, and the next minute they want to run again. The leaders, so much happening here in Canada. I think Conservatives, they thought this was in their kitty, and then suddenly they realized, no, not so quick, you know.
And no, and in the election, and sorry, the news cycle is so erratic because it's like as if every time President Trump is in the Oval House and he's doing a press conference and about any other issue, there's always that one reporter that says, hey, what about tariffs for Canada? And then he seems to freestyle it on the spot, and then it changes things, and then you see all the politicians from Canada run over to Washington, D.C., trying to figure things out. And so, you know, it's like every time he's asked, it's like how he feels in that moment, and then things start, you know, spiraling and going out of control. We, as we know it, politics is different now. It's fast paced. We can't even cover half the things that he's done in his own country. We're just focused on what it means for our country here and what this next year looks like for us.
Yeah, you're right. I don't want to digress too much. Last comments from both of you. We're going to do a special podcast once again this weekend where we'll be discussing what's happening in Canada at the federal, provincial, and at the municipal level as well. We've seen Brampton, you know, planning for tariffs from Trump. So federal, provincial, municipal, all levels are preparing. We'll do a special show this weekend once again on Saturday. We'll broadcast this show on Y Plus and Channel Y. We'll do that. But of course, when it comes to Trump, he's shaken up the world. There's a lot of disruption right across the globe, from Middle East to Russia, Ukraine, India, China policy, South America policy, and of course things have changed a lot in Mexico, in Canada as well. So we'll talk a lot more about that. And you're right, I mean, even if we could do this podcast for good 2 or even 3 hours, I don't think so. We will be catching up on all that Trump is announcing. The $5 million US gold visa as well. I mean, if you translate that into Indian or Pakistani currency, I mean, if you have $5 million US, why would you even think of moving to US, you know, let alone paying that money and then going through all that hassle? But yes, this is Trump for you. Every second there is a new headline. Ymedia breaking news ticker is busier than ever. I don't think so in the last 25 years, Ymedia breaking news ticker was ever busier than what it is right now. We write down the news, the next minute there's something new happening. Wow, amazing. Great time for the media for sure. It's always been good for ratings, you know. Every single media outlet in US, every single media outlet across the globe, including Ymedia, we're all getting busier than ever. Last 2 questions. I'll start with Robert once again, and then we'll call it a day. Robert, if you had to, in just 2 minutes, 1 minute of your suggestion or advice, whatever you want to say, 1 minute for the Liberals, what should be their strategy? I'm talking federal Liberals here. 1 minute for the federal Conservatives, if you had to share any advice for them. I'll ask Ramona ji, and then I'll also share my 2-minute thing. 1 minute for the Liberals and 1 minute for the Conservatives. Robert, we'll start with you.
I think for the Liberals, it's difficult, right? You have to make the argument that you are the party of change when you've been in power since 2015. That's not an easy argument to make, but you have to somehow make that argument because people are very much in the mood for change. And if you're the Conservatives, you have to make the argument of, okay, you say you're for all this changes and doing things. Why didn't you do this before? Right? I mean, the Liberals are going to come out and say, okay, we're getting rid of the carbon tax. Poilievre's going to have to say, well, then why didn't you do that before? They're going to say, oh, we want to get rid of the capital gains tax, the increase of the capital gains tax. Poilievre's got to say, why did you do that before? It's, to be honest, in terms of the arguments, it's a lot easier on the Conservative side. I think I'd much rather be Pierre Poilievre making those arguments than on the Mark Carney side making the arguments that, oh, no, we're actually going to do these things when there's a lot of unpopular things that this government has done, and you now have to defend them. So I think it's a much difficult tightrope for the Liberals to walk. I think their bounce is because people were really, really just sick of Justin Trudeau, and he is now gone. So mission accomplished. That's why the vote share has come back. But I think if you're the Liberals, you now the basically the battle has just begun. Now you have to make a very difficult pitch of we are actually the right party. We are the right party for you. You want to see change. We are representative of change, but we're a change from ourselves. It's a very weird argument to have to make. The Conservatives have it a lot easier by saying, then why did you do it before? Right? It's just like the Liberals can go on a 5-minute rant about, well, we're going to do this and change this and change this. And then all Paulie has to do is say, why didn't you do that before? Right. And I think that is a very difficult tightrope for the Liberals to walk. And I currently they're doing it, but I think we're going to see polls. I think we're going to see the Conservatives gaining a bit of momentum in as we get deeper into the race.
Yeah, and Ramana ji, same question for you. 1 minute suggestion or advice for the federal Liberals and a minute for the federal Conservatives. What do you have?
Yeah, this is a time where we're seeing the shift where because with Parliament being prorogued, we've had to see, we couldn't see much of Pierre Poilievre in the House, so he's had to do his press conferences. Same with Jagmeet Singh, and we've seen everything being led. I think we saw more activity from Prime Minister Justin Trudeau in the last 2 weeks than ever with his cycle of news turning and everything that he's doing so fast and all his announcements. So advice time, it would be obviously the Conservatives, they did their rally, they come up with their new messaging, and they're going to stick to, making sure that Canadians tag Carney with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, who's very unpopular. Now, how far that's going to last, let's see, because there needs to be more policy to see how life is going to be affordable and how to deal with Trump. I think the strategy here is that they need to come up with immediate policy of what they would do, given that Canada's going to go into a recession. GDP drop is going to be 5%. This is all Bank of Canada numbers. If the tariffs go into place and if they stay for a long term, it's going to be very devastating. So that, and then also how do you keep Canada secure when it comes to the borders? Okay,
I think we'll carry on this discussion. Robert, why don't you hold on? I think we have the Mayor of Brampton, Patrick Brown, with us.
We can't hear.
The Mayor of Brampton, Patrick Brown, with us. Patrick, a very warm welcome on Ymedia. How are you doing?
I'm here with my friend Hardeep Grewal, who has just been re-elected, and it's a great day for Ontario, a great day for Brampton, and just so pleased to see Hardeep back in the legislature. Because we've had some big projects for Brampton we've been working on together. The second hospital, which we have the groundbreaking coming in a few weeks, the medical school, the tunneled LRT. It's been quite a string of successes, and I can't wait to see this success continue and this collaboration continue. But tonight's also special because I got to celebrate my mother-in-law being elected an MPP too. So she's gonna have to learn from Hardeep, who's now you're not a rookie anymore. You're a veteran.
Yeah, second term, but that's thanks to friends like you that have been able to guide me along the way. And he's a champion of pulling the Hail Mary. Anytime things get tough and people underestimate Patrick Brown, he's always there to make sure that we pull the rabbit out of the hat and make that happen. And that entire riding, swinging the way, a testament to your hard work and your connection to the people across Peel and the relationships that you've built that have delivered that riding, especially.
So you can see we're all smiles here, Ymedia. Smiles.
Yes, I can imagine you're all smiles, you're all happy. Congrats to Hardeep Grewal and congrats to you as well. Yes, your mother-in-law, I mean, she's defeated a big heavyweight, Bonnie Crombie, right in her own backyard. Bonnie Crombie, who was MP from there, who has been councillor for them, who's been mayor from them, and she called Mississauga her home. And your mother-in-law, she defeated Bonnie Crombie. That's a big thing. And we're even hearing things that she could become potentially the next cabinet minister. And you worked hard, so congrats to you and your team. But my question to you is, do you see yourself heading towards the provincial leadership or maybe towards the federal side? That's what everyone wants to know from Mayor Patrick Brown.
No, I'm very happy in Brampton, and I presented, and I hope Premier Ford continues for a fourth and fifth mandate. Don't forget, it was Bramptonian and Bill Davis, who led the province for 14 years. And I think they've got a great team there. And I'm just happy that there's people that I believe in, that I enjoy working with, that are serving there at Queen's Park. And if I had any other answer to that question, my wife would be coming down here to give me heck. So I love being mayor of Brampton, and that's not going to change.
Yeah, Mayor Brown, now specific question, since I have you on Brampton. I know there has been a lot of focus, and we are all enjoying, I'm sure you're also enjoying a lot of focus on Brampton. We saw Premier Ford canvassing in Brampton. We've seen a lot of focus from the federal leaders as well for Brampton. What is your wish list? And yeah, by the way, also touch upon this thing. You've already announced a task force for dealing with the tariffs as well. So announce your wish list, announce your planning for Brampton's. Here we see the threat of tariff, and also you need a lot of dollars for infrastructure. And what are other wish lists that you would have?
So what's on my wish list? That's a great question. Well, really, when I embarked as mayor, the big issues were LRT, the hospital, more academic opportunity. Those are all essentially checked off the list. They're in progress. The med school is approved, opening this summer. The LRT has now been approved, and we're just looking at the construction timetable. The hospital groundbreaking is March 28th. But if I'm looking towards the future, there's a number of projects I'm working on with our provincial MPPs, maybe a 4-year cybersecurity degree with TMU. We're working on, of course, making sure the 413 project is completed, and protecting jobs. You know, the Premier has given a lot of support to Magna, to Stellantis. I'm really worried about the automotive sector, and I love the Premier's focus on protecting Canadian jobs, Ontario jobs. I want to support that effort to protect our jobs against this threat of tariffs. And, you know, the back of my mind is always policing community safety. That's something I know is dear to the Premier as well, to make sure our police have the resources to do their job. And lastly, one of the pet projects for Hardeep that I'm excited about is we're working with Minister Lumsden on a sports funding to have a multi-purpose facility that could host major soccer events, major kabaddi events. And so that's on our list of items to complete as well. And Hardeep has been the one championing that one. And so that, you know, I think now that he's back at Queen's Park, he's going to help us get that across the finish line.
All right, Mayor Brown, thank you so much. And it's been a time. We would definitely invite you here at our Channel Y studios, have a long, detailed discussions. But enjoy the spotlight because I see the federal Liberals and the provincial Conservatives both want to target Brampton, and you're enjoying this spotlight. And we are also happy because Brampton should get its due share. We have surpassed Mississauga in terms of population. We have it's a growing city. We have lots of needs there. So thank you so much. Anything else you want to quickly add before I let you go?
No, just say you're right. It's, you know, for a long time, Brampton didn't get its fair share. So it's nice that finally we're seeing that reconciled. So it's a great time for Brampton. We have a lot of work to do. You know, just talking to Hardeep as he was celebrating, and it was all about things we need to work on. So, you know, I realize that there's been great progress, but we have so much more to do. And I'm excited for that task.
Thank you so much. Congrats once again to Hardeep Grewal, and congrats once again to you for your mother-in-law's big victory. I know it's just one riding, but the candidate defeating Bonnie Crombie, I think it's a big thing. So congrats to both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care. Bye for now. So this was the Mayor of Brampton, Patrick Brown, and yes, it's a big victory for him. I think you were talking about the federal thing. Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, no, just wrapping up that, you know, this is definitely a race that's taking shape, and we're going to know by March 9th who's going to be the Liberal leader and what that means for the Liberal Party. It looks like it's going to be Mark Carney, but he's got a long way to go when it comes to being ready on stage to debate. So that's going to be very shortly what we're going to see.
Yeah, and from my side, I would say, when was the last time the Conservatives won a majority? In this century, they've won it just once. Yeah, 2004, 2006, or 2008. They were all, up until 2008, minority governments for Stephen Harper, for the Conservatives. It was only once they won a majority, that was 2011. What did they do anything differently which they weren't able to do in all these elections? I think they got completely shut out from the 25 ridings in Toronto. The performance in GTA wasn't that good, But once they entered into GTA, the ridings got better in Toronto. I think they won a majority. That's the mantra. That's the thing they want to do once again. But who will get them GTA? That should be their key question. The road to victory, minority or majority, whatever they want to do, lies through GTA. That's for the Conservatives. They need to work really hard in Greater Toronto area. For the Liberals, the only thing that I would like to tell is they need to bring up something new, whether for GTA or for Canada, because everyone is looking upon then how is Mark Carney any different than Trudeau, and how is he any different than the Conservatives? As long as Mark Carney, Chrystia Freeland, or whoever becomes the next Prime Minister and the Liberal leader, as long as they really try to tell the Canadians that this is our plan, what is their vision, that's what we want to know. As long as they're able to do that, I think Liberals can definitely offer at least a tough competition. Let's see how it goes, but my final line would be this next election would be for Conservatives to lose. Otherwise, they should have won this election. I mean, after 10 years, from Winston Churchill to Margaret Thatcher, people do not last, from Stephen Harper to Justin Trudeau. So if they win another election for Liberals, I think it's a Conservative loss, not a Liberal win. That's all I can say. Ramona ji, thank you so much for being on the show. We'll carry on the discussion. Robert, thank you so much for being on the show, and we'll carry on this discussion for you. And but we will have Graham McGraw as well very shortly on our show. So before we get, they're saying it's a bit of a delay for Graham McGraw. So they're telling us he should be in very shortly. So okay, so we have some time before we get Graham McGraw to join us. So I think we'll better make use of this time. I want to read your mind on Trump. Why don't we talk about Trump? What do we think that Trump is planning for Canada? What's in store for Canada? Would we be able to deal with Trump? Robert, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, the Trump situation is very interesting. I mean, looking at it, with Trump coming into power, very few presidents are. I mean, the last time an American president has had 2 non-consecutive terms, but even more succinctly, very rarely will a president be elected to their second term and have a majority of the House and Senate, right? This is theoretically Trump's last term in office, right? At this point, you're not really like a lot of people when trying to explain Trump will try to say, oh, he can't do this because the voters in Michigan are going to be mad at him, or oh, he can't do that because it's going to, but he really doesn't care about, like, he's never going to be on the ballot again in Michigan. He's never going to be on the ballot again in Pennsylvania or the Rust Belt or anywhere. He's done. This is theoretically his last term in office. There's some calls for him to run again, but I don't think that's unlikely to happen. So the idea that he's only doing things and he's concerned about having to face a re-election, that's just not a cohesive argument, in my opinion. I think he's actually far more desiring to build a lasting legacy. And when you're talking about some of these big accomplishments, adding Greenland to the U.S., that we basically forever more into the future, America's going to say we have Greenland because of President Trump. If they were to annex Canada and make Canada the 51st state, that he could say, I have added Canada to the U.S. They tried to do it 200 years ago, fought a war over it. We lost the war. I did it without firing a shot, right? The changing of the name of the Gulf of Mexico, right? The ideas for Gaza, the ending the war in Ukraine, right? I think he cares far more about trying to build legacy things than he cares if people don't vote for Republicans in the midterms. I don't think he cares about any of that stuff. I think he's far more willing to try to build some sort of legacy and go down or attempt to go down as one of the all-time greatest presidents. I don't think he's going to care if some random voter is mad that the price of their car went up, or that the price of gas went up because they couldn't get the Canadian raw crude to the refinery in Michigan. So I know in Canadian politics, obviously the talk has been about these tariffs and fighting and trying to get them not come on. I kind of think they're going to happen no matter what, because there's not like Trump's not running for re-election. So if let's say tariffs go on and let's say it does hurt the U.S. economically and let's say things do get far more expensive for the U.S., I don't think Trump particularly cares. I think Trump is far more willing to let his own country face economic pain in trying to build some sort of lasting legacy. So I think obviously Canada's going to try to counter the tariffs, try to not have them come on, but I think Canada's going to take a massive hit from it. And I think it's really difficult to negotiate with someone who's willing to punch themselves in the face.
All right, thank you so much. And that's all that we have here at Channel Y Studios. Once again, I'd like to thank Robert for taking our time. Main Street Research, one of the leading organizations in Canada. Compliments to Main Street for doing an amazing job. Thank you so much to you, Kuto, and your entire team. Robert, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ramonaji, thank you so much for leading the show from the front and on an election night leading Ymedia. Compliments to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. That's all that we have here. Stay tuned with Ymedia. And I'd like to remind our viewers once again, at Ymedia, we publish an English language newspaper. Please do not forget to pick your copy of Midweek newspaper. Midweek newspaper is the largest free English newspaper in Canada. Also, we've changed the timings of our radio show as well. In the morning, we start early now from 8 a.m. till 2 p.m. Ymedia live on Radio Y, 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. Do tune in our radio show every day from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. And don't forget to check out our channel Y+, 24/7 all English channel Y+ available on all boxes, and our channel Y in Punjabi, Hindi, Urdu and English. Rogers 857, Bell 828, Telus 2418, Ignite 707, and do not forget to log on to our website southasiandaily.com, ymediaplus.com. For any information, please to call 416